All right, everybody hooked up, ready to go. All right. Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the, it is the October 6th, 2022 meeting of the Edina City Council. Before we get the meeting started this evening, I'm going to be a little bit redundant here to what Director Benarott said. And we've been operating on a hybrid basis for quite some time. We want to allow people that don't feel comfortable coming to City Hall to be able to participate on a remote basis. So if you're watching the meeting on cable TV or edinamn.gov live meetings or on Facebook, EdinaMN, and you want to participate in either community comment or you want to participate in a public hearing, and there's several of those tonight, you can call 786-496-5601, and then remember to enter the PIN number 2913231. The information's on the screen now, so if you didn't catch it when I mentioned it, you can see it and write it down. And then press *1 on your telephone keypad. That'll get you to the operator who will get you in the queue to speak. And then an operator will introduce you to Director Benarott, and Director Benarott will bring you into the City Council meeting. And then for those of you that are here live and wish to testify, we'll take your testimony first on any particular matter or with respect to community comment. And just a reminder now, when we get to community comment, that comes up fairly quickly. What we'll want you to do is make sure you don't talk about something that's on the agenda this evening or otherwise scheduled for a future public hearing. So having provided that information, let's call the meeting to order. I'm going to ask our clerk, Sharon Ellison, to call the roll.
Councilmember Anderson.
Here.
Councilmember Jackson.
Here.
Councilmember Pierce is absent. Councilmember Stoughton.
Here.
Mayor Hovland.
Here. Next, we have the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. We have a form of meeting agenda in front of us this evening. It's also been published to the general public. Is there anyone on the council or staff that wishes to modify the agenda in any form? All right, is there a motion to approve the meeting agenda as published?
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion by Member Jackson, seconded by Member Anderson, that we adopt the meeting agenda as published. Any further discussion? All those in favor of approving the meeting agenda say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. And now we are at community comment. So again, that phone number, if you want to call in and get ready after we take some other public testimony or potential public input, there's the number on the screen, 786-496-5601. Conference PIN number is 2913231. Press *1 to speak to the operator, and that'll get you into the queue to have Director Benarott bring you in to talk to the council. So let's first go to folks in the audience. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to address the council on a matter of concern to them that's not on the agenda this evening or otherwise scheduled for a future public hearing? I see somebody poised to come forward and talk to the council. Welcome.
Hello. Ruth Ann Metzger, 5600 Dale Avenue. As you know, I'm from Melody Lake A. I do want to thank the city for providing the hoses, the sprinklers, and the timers. They made a huge difference in my yard, and I was able to mow Monday, the whole yard, the first time in 2 years because of the tear-up. So that's good news. I'm not concerned about the yard. As was reported at the last meeting by the city manager, I'm concerned about the street. Hanson intersection at 56th, 56th Avenue at Dale still has the big gap. 3 parking signs have been put up now, and the latest parking sign on Dale contradicts the small sign put on the stop sign. I'm curious, how do we get information? How are we going to know when the railroad gives the approval for the go-ahead? I think our neighborhood, especially Melody Lake A, uses those 2 intersections so much that we need to be kept on the loop so we know when the work's going to be done, when we have to modify our routes. And when the sidewalk's going to be done, because in winter it dumps people in the street, and it's the narrow portion of 56th. So I would really like to know how we're going to be communicated to and what the detail is to complete Melody Lake A. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Metzger. I did happened to go to see one of your neighbors the other night and pick them up for a Rotary event, and I did notice that your yard looked pretty good finally. So I was pleased about that too. Anyone else in the audience wish to address the council on a matter of concern to them that's not on the agenda this evening or scheduled for a future public hearing? Okay. All right, let's go to the virtual audience and find out if we've got anybody that wants to speak to the council that's watching us remote.
I have no one on the line, sir.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right, Ms. Metzger, we'll get some answers for you, and I think, well, we can go to Director Milner right now, I think is...
Or do you want to cover those during the presentation of that project?
Well, it's going to be a little bit. I can just quickly say that to update schedule, we're going to update the Better Together website, let people know how and when we finally get approvals from the railroad. We're finally meeting with them next week in person to try to get answers to when that we can actually do the work. So it's the railroad that's holding us up, and we can answer any other questions later when we hit that public hearing for Melody Lake.
All right, and there was a question about signage on the no parking around the
Yeah,
curb there.
we can reach out to Ruth directly on that.
Yeah, all right,
Even through
good.
traffic safety.
Yeah, that's a legitimate concern, I think, too. Okay, good, thanks for that, Director Milner. And then we're going to go now to Manager Neal, who responds to community comments from the meeting 2 weeks before. And Manager Neal.
Thank you, Your Honor. We had two people for community comment at your September 20th meeting. First was a petition that we received about the ice cream truck ban. We don't really have an ice cream truck ban per se. We have tight regulations around food trucks, and those tight regulations were developed in collaboration with restaurants in the community who wanted to make sure that they had a fair competitive environment. So that's where that comes from. It included, it did not exclude ice cream trucks during that discussion and those regulations that came out of that discussion. So if there is interest, we've had some level of discussion at it at the staff level. If there's interest among council members to address this issue, if you want us to address it, we can do that pretty easily through writing an ordinance amendment and bringing it to you. The second person who spoke to us had concerns. She expressed concerns about the Blake Road project, and I don't know if you noticed, but Director Milner went outside the council chambers and talked with her that night and answered her questions and resolved her concerns.
All right, very good.
That's all we have.
Hey, cause any add-on comment from council members?
Yeah, I'd like to.
Yes.
I'd like to let the ice cream trucks back on the roads.
Hear, hear. Yeah.
Ditto.
Okay, we will work up that ordinance, and Mr. Kendall just heard that too, so we will take care of that for you and bring it back to you in the dead of winter sometime. All right.
Yeah.
We'll be ready for the spring.
Can't think of a better time to do it. The ice cream truck ordinance in about January. There'll be a lot of anticipation around it.
Yes, there will.
That'll help get through winter. All right.
Thank you.
Good. All right. Thanks for those report outs. And then we've got a consent agenda that's got a lot of information at this reporting period or this meeting period, and I don't think there was anybody that indicated they wanted to take anything off the consent agenda. But nonetheless, I'll ask the question, does anyone on the council wish to remove an item from the consent agenda? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the items on the consent agenda in a single motion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion by Member Staunton, second by Member Jackson to approve the items on the consent agenda in a single motion. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of the items on the consent agenda in a single motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. And then we're on to special recognitions and presentations. We've got a couple of matters here this evening that are going to be real enjoyable to talk about. Heritage Preservation Commission Century Homes Program. It's an informational item only, and Emily Boddicker of our planning department has the introduction, and then we've got some of our commissioners here that are going to talk about this from an informational standpoint.
Yes. Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. An item on the Heritage Preservation Commission's 2022 work plan was to explore the development of a Century Home recognition program here in Edina, and they were looking at other programs that were already in place around the state. And so they were going to look at the resources needed to manage a potential program similar to those here in Edina. So tonight, I'm here to introduce Commissioner Longquist and student member Maheshwari, and they're going to present their findings. And as you heard tonight, on the proposed 2023 work plan of the Heritage Preservation Commission, they hope to build on the information that the subcommittee gathered here and to continue their work in 2023. So with that, I'll hand it over to the commissioners.
All right. Thank you, Emily. Hi, my name is Ashwin Maheshwari. I'm a student commissioner on the Heritage Preservation Commission of the City of Edina. I am here with Commissioner Longquist and our second partner, Commissioner Hasenstadt, couldn't be here today, but together we are working towards developing a Century Homes program for Edina. And first off, before we get started, I'd like to say I feel privileged to be able to serve Edina in such a meaningful way, and I hope to work with all of you to work towards our common goals of historical awareness and other things. So I'll hand it off to Shane.
Great, thank you, Ashwin. And we'll scroll down. So we got the idea for this. I was attending a state preservation conference. We're obliged to send someone each year, and in 2019 I went to St. Cloud and heard about a program they did. You may know that our mission is to protect the heritage resources in Edina. There's 11 on our landmark registry. There's 7 buildings, 3 places, 1 district. But the comprehensive plan talks a little more broadly, too, about some education and protection and community building, and talks about working with Edina Heritage Society. And this project gives us a chance to do just that. So our group started by putting together an opportunity statement. 3 main points. One is it's a hyper-local, resident-driven way to build some historical awareness. People who are interested, if they live in a home that's 100 years old or more, can do a little book report, file it with the city, and we will give it a stamp of approval. They pay a fee to buy a plaque, and then there's 2 ways of community connection. One is through seeing that plaque and either informally connecting, and number 2, there's a database of information so people can learn about that. But more formally, a chance for walking tours, programming with the schools and so on. The third piece that we were curious to dive into is some environmental impact, and it may be counterintuitive to the builder's narrative that the new building is the green building, but in fact, embodied carbon in materials and construction accounts for about 1/3 of the carbon emissions from the building industry. So by preserving and rehabilitating old buildings, that's a way we can contribute through this program, hopefully, to the climate agenda. Okay. And we started by digging into this. What potential Century Homes do we have? The city assessor's office kindly gave us a list of houses that were built 1925 and prior. There are already 219 homes that would be eligible, and you can see from the graph, it just goes up from there. A really interesting map, I don't know how well you can see it, but from the planning office, the deep red is homes that are built before 1930, and then the deep orange is homes built between 1931 and 1940. Not surprisingly, there's a big concentration in Northeast Edina, but one thing we're excited about this program is there's some red and orange sprinkled throughout the city, some old farmhouses and stories, and it's a chance for us to be able to celebrate that history in a really resident-driven way. So we're very excited about that.
All right, so obviously we're not here to reinvent the wheel, and so that means taking inspiration from other cities around that are neighboring us and neighboring Minneapolis and St. Paul. So we put together kind of a list of cities and things that we hope to take inspiration from when building our own program and building the plaque program to recognize these century homes. So the first City Heritage Preservation Commission that we thought had great aspects or on their website was the City of St. Cloud. St. Cloud provided a history of each home, and it kind of gave an anecdote of like, what wear and tear has this home gone through? What is the story of these owners? And also, what are the unique features of these homes? Are there certain landscape things? Are there certain events or momentous moments in that community that were shaped by that home or that building? And so we hope to emulate that in our own program and display the stories and the history of each home on our website through kind of the homeowner-led book report, as Jane mentioned earlier, related to the history of that home. And I think that will help Edina kind of show its perseverance spirit through the years. Like, these homes have been around for decades, literally centuries, and I think that sort of displays the perseverance spirit of Edina. And also, by displaying this information to the public, we kind of open our doors to other communities and show why Edina is so unique and what makes Edina our community. Next, when it comes to actually recognizing these homes, a big central aspect of these programs has been their plaques. So they've been developing essentially a way to recognize these homes through the creation of plaques, typically either ceramic or bronze or other materials. We, as an HPC, discussed, and we believe that ceramic might be the better option for a plaque, considering that the price of bronze has been increasing the last couple of years. But essentially, the process of developing a plaque recognition program would be that the City of Edina would be providing the application and the instructions and the procedures to homeowners on how a plaque would be awarded to them, and the homeowner themselves would be responsible for financing the creation of the plaque for their home. So St. Louis Park and Minneapolis do a really good job of this, and we hope to take strong inspiration from their plaque recognition programs as we build our own.
This next slide is probably better titled, what we would do next year if we get the green light to go forward. The first column, no interest. If people aren't interested, fine. It's something they don't have to do. It's a low-cost, low-staff time project. But one thing we'd like to do, if we can test drive this process further next year, is reach out to those 219 homes and take a test drive of the interest. And that would help council make a decision for the future if this is something that has strong reception in the community. The second item that we are really excited about is I read in the Sun Current about a new startup by an Edina woman called House Novel. It's like an Ancestry.com for homes. It's a platform that's national and a way for people to tell the stories of their homes. She and her partner are very excited to partner with us. If we wish, we can say more later. But this could be a pilot program to roll out nationally. So they would be really excited to take on a lot of the administrative piece, or simply it could be an option that we share with homeowners and say, if you wish, please upload and share your story here. The map is interesting. They have populated already all of these homes in Edina on their website because, for example, Country Club's on the National Register, so there's already photos of those homes. They've already used the Library of Congress. They've got state resources, so it's a really exciting place, and they're willing to spend $5,000 in development money, so that could be an interesting avenue. And Ashwin talked about the plaque. Here's a little more just to show how game they are. They put together a whole proposal on how this might go. We explained that we're waiting to hear from the city if there's interest to take this to the next step of developing materials and putting budgets together. But it could be a nice opportunity. Because they're new, some people on the HPC had concerns. Let's see how their ads, do we like their model if we are going to do a partnership? But this gives us an additional year to look into that. It's just a neat organization, regardless of whether we partner with them or not.
Yeah, so speaking of partners, The first thing we'd like to announce is our current partnership with the Edina Historical Society. I guess as an update to this slide, we are working with the Edina Historical Society in order to develop the program and create a stronger impact of this program on our community. Currently, we have the executive director and the board at the Edina Historical Society on board with our program, no pun intended. One of their board members is really keen upon developing or creating walking tours across Edina for the Century Homes program that we would hope to eventually establish. And I think that through these walking tours and other community engagements, the Century Homes program can actually create a community environment and build Edina to be a tool to build Edina as a community, like a stronger community, and bring us together more. So, the Edina Historical Society is a really cool organization, and we're really happy to be working with them. The other possible partners that we have brainstormed with the HBC over the last couple months are potentially using social media. Obviously, that's not the most conventional quote-unquote partner, but through the use of social media, commissioners on the Heritage Preservation Commission voiced enthusiasm about using social media to spread the word about the program and to popularize it across Edina, so that people actually know about what we're doing and they know about the significance of a century home and when new homes become 100 years old. So other possible partners that we have talked about are the Edina Rotary Club and even Edina Public Schools, and those two would be great avenues for connecting with different groups of people. So when it comes to becoming a Century homeowner and being recognized, there's kind of a big picture of what that looks like. So the first would be what we do as a commission, which is the ongoing marketing and spreading awareness, like we talked about with social media and walking tours with Edina Historical Society. Then moving forward, the home is nearing 100 years old, and so that homeowner will be contacted, and we would do outreach to those owners that are about to become Century homeowners. And then as a result, we can ask them, do they want to be recognized? And if they say no, we might try again later. And if they say yes, we can we can start the application process essentially.
All right, so just to wrap it up, this is what we've done this year. This is what we've put together as an initial fact-finding. We think it's an exciting, low-cost, high-yield program. We would love the green light from you on the draft advisory communication that's in the packet and will be coming forward to say, let's have a work plan item for next year that takes it a step further. Let's fine-tune the process and the budgets that it would require, put all the pieces together. Ideally, what we would do then would be have approval for 2024 and a launch in 2024 to deliberately coincide with the centennial of the Country Club District. So if you agree that it could be a promising program, many other cities have used it to great effect. We'd love to see your approval, and if there's time for questions, we'll gladly take them.
Sure. Thank you, Commissioners, for that very thorough presentation. Questions from council members or comments? Member Jackson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So thank you very much. This is really intriguing, and I love to see an idea brought to life and give some structure to it. So thank you very much for this. I think we should continue to move forward. It would be interesting to see, if you could find half a dozen homes to sort of, just as a test to see what do you guys think and what kind of issues would they raise? Because I think that neighbor feedback would be really useful. Things like, well, are my name and address going to be out on the internet, things like that about data privacy, or just, this is so wonderful, I wish we could do more kind of thing. So I'd love to hear what some of the neighbors think as you move forward. But thank you so much. This is really interesting.
Thank you, Member Jackson. Manager Neal, if the council were to affirm what they've heard tonight and would like to go to the next step, what would you recommend?
I think you would just give us that kind of direction, and we would talk with our
Kind of
HPC
general
staff.
direction tonight, as
Yep.
opposed to putting it on a future agenda and
Yep.
having a vote on it. We could just give general direction.
Yep.
Okay. We've heard from Member Jackson, in favor of it. Member Anderson?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm in total agreement. I think it's a great project, and I especially like the idea of the walking tour. When you do that, as you mentioned, you do create a sense of community. If you walk around Boston in certain neighborhoods, there's a lot of guided tours, and what you find is that there's great interest in those properties, and we could get at least a piece of that here. So thank you for your hard work.
Member Sutton?
Yeah, I know Commissioner Lonnquist has some experience with walking tours, having organized a couple in the country club neighborhood. Those were fabulous. I know they're a lot of work. I love the fact that this is pretty low effort, high yield. I think something like that is what you said. And the other thing I really like is this notion of downloading history, because the people who live in these homes know a lot about them. They get to love them, and they want to pass that along. And too often it goes with them. They leave the house or they pass away or something, and then you never can find it again. So I think that's a great way to capture what we're wanting to find out and log some history and keep preserving it. So thanks for your work. I'm supportive as well.
Yeah, as am I. I'm fully supportive of it, both aspects of it. I think you did a very thorough presentation. I'm glad you came home and want to refine this idea from what you'd learned at a statewide meeting. I think it'll be a wonderful way to build community, as you both say. So, and I'm sure if Member Pierce were able to be here this evening, he'd feel the same way. So,
Thank you, and I want to thank you for adding student members to our commissions, because Oshwin's been a terrific asset. So that's a great idea.
Yeah, thank you so much, guys.
all right, thank you. And for those of you in the audience, looking at that young guy who's in high school on the Heritage Preservation Board and thinking, boy, what great young leaders we have coming up that care about community and care about public service. And, we've got two of those young folks on every commission, and they do a wonderful job, and they've got full voting privileges, and so we're really grateful they come forward and want to serve. And our council members, led by these two to my left, have done a great job interviewing candidates. So thank you for being here this evening, and thanks for that information. The other item we have tonight on this portion of the agenda is the annual 20 Images of Edina presentation. This is the 2022 version. There's 6 categories of awards here, and we've got Dan Dorr, a graphic designer, and Amy Overgaard from Edina Magazine with us tonight to go through those 6 categories and show who the winners are, and then I'll walk down and help celebrate those winners, those selected winners. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Hovland and the City Council. My name is Dan Dorr, and I'm the graphic designer here at the city. Joined with me is Amy Overgaard, and she's the editor of Edina Magazine. And tonight we have the honor of presenting the winners of the 2022 Images of Edina contest. The city established Images of Edina in 2004 to recognize and collect photographs that capture Edina as a place for living, learning, raising families, and doing business. Each year, residents and employees who work in Edina are invited to submit their favorite photos taken in the community over the past year. Images of Edina is co-sponsored by the city and Edina Magazine, and I'd like to give a special thanks to Amy and everyone else at Edina Magazine for their work in managing the contest. So thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
This year, we had 61 submitted photos. A judging panel of communications professionals chose the winning photographs in 5 categories. The photos were judged on a variety of elements, including composition, lighting, relevance to each category, and the degree of difficulty. There was also an online vote on Edina Magazine for the Reader's Choice Award. Of the category winners, 1 photo was chosen as the overall best in show, which we will reveal tonight. Now, on to the winners. And for the winners who are attending in person, please step forward when your name is called, and we can photograph you accepting your award. So for the activities and events category, our winner is Leah Steidall for her photo Soccer Sunset.
Thank you.
All right, and for the business category, our winner is Nancy Ferguson for her photo RH Light, which was taken inside of Restoration Hardware.
All right. And for the...
the first two gift cards that went out from Every. Those are the last two.
Yeah, unfortunately.
All right, and for the people category, our winner is Vicki Hurwitz for her photo, Dry Dock Repair.
Let's hold this just a little bit. All these people have vacated and then. All right, that's great. Thank you.
All right, and for the Places in Edina category, our winner is Rebecca Peterson for the photo Library Day.
Were you in the one that won last year too? Yeah. Look at that big smile. Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
And for the plants and animals category, our winner is Judy Folk for her photo Surprise. And I believe Judy is not with us tonight. So for the next category, we'll do the Reader's Choice.
Yes.
Same.
And this year, the Reader's Choice went to a photo that already won an award, so it goes to Rebecca Peterson for Library Day.
Let's just do one of you in a minute.
Oh, yeah.
There we go.
Thank you.
All right. Now for our final award, the Best in Show, and that is awarded to Vicki Hurwitz for Dry Dock Repair.
All right, let's congratulate all of our winners.
Yes, thank you to all who participated, and be sure to have your cameras ready for next year. Winners, thank you for being here tonight, and congratulations on your wonderful photos.
Yes, thank you so much for your submissions, and you can look for them in the 2023 issues of Edina magazine.
And Amy and Dan, thanks for being with us this evening and participating in this event. Really appreciate Edina Magazine being here, taking such an important role, and this is a really great community event. Thanks. All right, we're going to move on to the public hearing portion of the agenda this evening, and we've got 8 public hearings. The first 4 are things that we deal with every year that we have to cover from a process standpoint. And the first one we've got tonight in that category is a potential certification of delinquent utilities. And Alicia McAndrew, our finance director, is going to be with us here virtually and going to make the presentation on certifying these delinquent utilities to the county. Ms. McAndrew? Okay. Can you hear us, Ms. McAndrews? We're not hearing you.
You hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you slightly. We'll get a little more volume.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's better. Director Benarot's helping with that as well. Go ahead.
Wonderful. Thank you. Yes, I'm here this evening to provide just a brief presentation for the public hearing on the certification of delinquent utility bills. This is the annual certification that we provide to City Council and through the public hearing process. So just quick by way of background, state statute and city ordinance allow the city to certify unpaid utility charges to the county for collection through property taxes. The certification process this year involves the city notifying account holders with unpaid water, sewer, storm sewer, and recycling charges of over $50, and those that have been delinquent for at least 30 days. The notification letter went out in early September, and it explained the process in the pending certification and provided, of course, this public hearing date. The next step in the process, if the overdue balances are not paid by October 19th, a $35 administrative fee will be applied to the account. Then customers have until November 21st to pay the overdue balances before the certification process to the county would go to the next step. So on the 21st, city staff will certify the amounts by providing the delinquent list and the resolution if passed by council at the October 18th council meeting. We would send that to the county, and also the certified amounts would also there would be a 6.5% interest rate applied to any outstanding balances at that point in time. These are one-year assessments applied to the property taxes. So just a little bit of history here of the utility certification going back to 2016. When the September notices go out, it is a pretty lengthy list of this year over 1,000 properties with an outstanding balance total of $739,464. Last week, when we pulled the records, it was down to 651 properties with a balance of $477,000, and we expect it'll be even lower come November at the time of certification. That's just been the historical trend. So today, as I said, is the public hearing that will close at noon on October 10th. And then we will present you with a resolution at the October 18th City Council meeting for certification of any outstanding utility bills at that time. That concludes my presentation, but I am happy to stand for any questions that members may have.
All right, thank you, Director McAndrews. I'm going to ask any council members if they've got questions for you on this matter, and then I'll open it up for public testimony. Anyone? No? All right, no questions from council members, Director McAndrews, but stand by. I'm going to now open this up for public hearing, and of course the motion when we get done with this is going to be that the public hearing be closed at noon on October 10th, and we're going to continue the action on this item to the October 18th City Council meeting. That means people can still correspond with the council on this matter through all available communication means that the city has. Is there anyone in the audience, now that we're opening this up for public testimony, who wishes to testify regarding this matter? All right, I'm not seeing anybody coming forward. Director Benarott, do we have anybody in the queue that wishes to testify?
I do not have anyone in the queue, but because not a lot of time here has passed, I would recommend we wait a minute or so before moving forward. My clock shows that it's 7:41, so I will come back to you at 7:42 or when I have a caller, whichever is first.
All right, thank you. All right, thank you, Director Benarott. With regard to Resolution 2022-90, which is the potential certification of delinquent utilities, number DU-22, is there a motion to close the public hearing in this matter at noon on October 10th, 2022,
So
and continue
moved.
the action on the item to the October 18, 2022 City Council meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Member Jackson moves. Member Staunton seconds. The motion is stated. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of the motion as stated, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. All right, the next matter we have before us, our Assistant Director of Parks and Natural Resources, Tom Swenson, is going to talk to us about some of the weed mowing they had to do this summer in response to some of the properties that became overgrown, and we need to assess those for the work that the city did, and he's going to lead us through this matter. Welcome, Mr. Swenson.
Thank you, Mayor and members of council. I'm here tonight for the weed mowing assessment. I'll be brief. The weeds shall be regularly controlled, cut and controlled so that no plant shall exceed 10 inches in length as measured from the base of the ground to the tip of the leaf. Noxious weeds as defined by the State of Agriculture shall be eradicated. When weeds exceed 10 inches in height, the weed inspector attempts to reach the property owner in person, and lastly by certified letter. The owner has 10 days to comply. Park maintenance staff at that point will cut the weeds and the properties, assess the cost of labor and the equipment. This year we only have 5 different properties that were cut by park maintenance staff. This is the list of the addresses, not very remarkable this year. And this does include a $30 administrative fee. And with that, I'm here for questions.
All right, does anybody on the council have a question for Assistant Park Director Swenson? Great, Member Jackson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So it seems like this is a smaller number. Do you think there's any correlation between this and No Mow May?
I do believe there's a correlation. So the number did drop quite a bit. There are more and more people that have been converting and focusing on pollinator-friendly land or properties in their front yard. So the conversion, I think, is happening, and there's more and more properties that are heading down that road, which is creating fewer and fewer work orders for us.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. That's all.
Good. Other questions from council members? All right, this is also a public hearing matter. I think the staff will put the phone number up on the screen, and while they're doing that, people can use to call in. I'm going to turn to the audience. I'm going to open this matter up for public testimony. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to testify with regard to this public hearing matter, Resolution 2022-89, which is a potential weed mowing special assessment against the 5 indicated properties? All right. Let's, seeing no one coming forward, I'm going to turn to Director Benarott and see if we have anybody in the queue. Folks listening in from home, there's the phone number to call in on the screen. Conference PIN number is there as well. Press *1 to speak to the operator, or the operator will get you to Director Benarott, and Director Benarott will bring you into the council.
I do not have anyone at this time, but it looks like I've got another 40 seconds or so before I'd feel comfortable moving on.
All right.
I think it's safe for you to move forward.
All right, thank you. With regard to this potential weed mowing special assessment embodied in Resolution 2022-89, is there a motion to motion to close the public hearing at noon on October 10, 2022, and continue the action on the item to the October 18, 2022 City Council meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion by Member Anderson and second by Member Staunton to the motion as stated, to adopt the motion as stated. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of the motion as stated, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. Director Swenson has the next matter as well, and that is tree removal. Sometimes we have to go out and remove diseased trees after giving homeowners a chance to remove them themselves. And Director Swenson will let you take up this matter as well. Go ahead.
Thank you. So this is a tree removal assessment. Under City Code, the tree inspector finds and controls the spread of diseased trees. Trees must be clear vegetation to a height of 16 feet above the curb on the edge of the street, and sidewalks must be clear to a height of 8 feet. The city forester identifies diseased clearance trees and public safety trees and notifies the homeowner through registered mail, and they have 21 days to comply. The homeowners have the option to remove and dispose of the trees on their own or through their own contractor. 4 different properties chose to have the city contract removal or trimming of their trees for a total of 6 trees in 2022. This is all done with private contractors. The city forester secures different quotes for that. The cost varies greatly depending on the work and the size of the tree. Obviously, you'll see in the next slide. And the tree assessment guideline is a little dated, focusing on the 1-year assessment, 2-year assessment, and 3-year assessment as the options. Once you exceed $1,000, 3-year assessment is the guideline currently. This is the address list for this year. I did want to give a reminder that last year, 7 Woodland Drive was approved for assessment for $3,685 to be assessed in 2022. So I did not include it on this list because this is a list of the new trees. I just wanted to remind of that action last year. So this list of trees, the first 3 worked directly with the city forester, agreed to the terms and understood the process and where we were going with it. The last tree on Kent Avenue, again, was a substantial tree, $14,255. Currently, our guideline would be a 3-year assessment on that. The homeowner, on their own, tried to get other prices that exceeded $20,000. So Luther did a great job getting them a good deal on that, but it still is a very expensive tree assessment. So on this Kent Avenue address, staff recommends that we hold this till 2023 so we can review and alter the assessment policy as necessary and also look at including any overlapping programs through the city and Hennepin County. And with that, I'm here for questions.
Questions for Director Swenson? All right. This is a public hearing matter. This resolution 2022-91, tree removal special assessment, potential tree removal special assessment, is now open for public testimony. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to testify regarding this matter? Seeing no one coming forward and hearing nothing, I'll turn next to the folks that might be watching the meeting remotely. And again, we'll put that phone number up on the screen for our residents if they want to call in on this matter. They're certainly welcome to, and we'll hold it open. There's the number, 786-496-5601. Conference PIN number 291-3231. Press *1 to speak to the operator, and then they'll bring in to Director Benarod.
I have no callers at this time, but I'll come back to you at 7:52 or when I have a caller, whichever is first.
Thank you.
Your Honor.
Yes.
I just wanted, as long as we're waiting, I just wanted to tell you that some of the discussion we've been having as staff is that you've seen in the last 2 years some pretty big bills to do tree removal here. We don't think those are going away. We think that it might be a more humane in terms of an assessment process if we look at these larger assessments and compare them to street assessments and try to look at terms that we use for neighborhood street special assessments and apply them to some of these larger trees. So that's kind of the policy rubric we're looking at.
And that's a conversation we could have if the motion passes and we take this up on the 18th?
Yep.
Okay. Anyone calling in, Director Benarod?
No, I think it's okay for you to move forward.
All right. With regard to Resolution 2022-91, which is a potential tree removal special assessment against the indicated properties that Director Swenson talked about, is there a motion to close the public hearing at noon on October 10, 2022, with regard to this potential tree removal special assessment and continue the action on the item to the October 18, 2022 City Council meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Member Jackson, second by Member Anderson, to the motion as stated, adoption of the motion as stated. Any further conversation, any further discussion? All right, all those in favor of adoption of the motion as stated, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. And then the other one that we regularly have, Jessica Vanderwerf Wilson, our Water Resources Manager, has this matter, and that is an annual aquatic vegetation special assessment that comes before us in the form of improvement number AQ-22. And Manager Wilson, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. This is an annual assessment. You've seen this one before. This is City Coordinated Aquatic Vegetation Management Services. This is something that is requested by homeowners. It's not required by the city or the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources. There are certain criteria you have to meet to be eligible for those services. That's described in our Comprehensive Water Resources Management Plan. And tonight I'm asking for action on the public hearing for this annual special assessment. So Arrowhead Lake is the first one. This is a typical electrical services to run aeration systems and also some aquatic vegetation services, algae control, and some submerged plant control, as well as lake dye treatments, all the DNR permitting costs, and my staff time to administer, to coordinate those services. There's also a fisheries study that the Arrowhead Lake Association and the Indian Head Lake Association also did over this last 2 seasons, and that showed that the 2016 stocking efforts by the lake associations was successful. At Arrowhead Lake, there were some goldfish that were found, I think 5 that were mature and have the ability to reproduce, but we didn't find any little ones, which is good news. It seems like the predator fish are keeping those out of there. So goldfish, kind of like carp, can cause a lot of damage in the lake. So future discussions about how to control that, we're having those conversations now with the lake associations. So you can see there are 36 accessible units, and the cost is divided evenly among those 36. All the itemized costs are there, and then the breakdown per unit. Indian Head Lake, similar. They have an aeration service, so they pay for the electricity for that system to operate. The operation maintenance was a little higher in this 2021 year. They replaced a couple of compressor vanes for that aeration service. They also had to replace a few thin ice signs as they operate that year round, and then also some tree clearing to maintain access down to that equipment. So that's why that was a little bit higher in 2021. There's also some algae control and lake dye treatments, that fisheries study, and then the DNR permits and coordination for that service. So that is also shared evenly among those 33 accessible units for the price shown there. Lake Nancy is a smaller water body. There are 20 accessible units around that water body, and they participate in vegetation and algae control and the DNR permitting costs for that. And the breakdown is shown there. And then at Mill Pond, there's a mechanical harvester that does currently 3 service visits each year, and then the corresponding DNR permit fee and staff time to coordinate that service. Mill Pond has a tiered assessment rate based on just how accessible those areas are for that harvesting operation. Some of those areas get pretty shallow, and then there are some properties that are across the street. And so they're broken down to a full RU, a 2/3 RU, and a 1/3 RU, and the prices are shown there, broken down for each of those as well. The Mill Pond Association actually incorporated in 2022. They recently had a neighborhood meeting, and I have their first board meeting coming up this fall also, which will be a good step in improving communication and service delivery there also. So my recommendation is to continue the public hearing until next Monday at noon on the 10th, and then making a decision at the October 18th meeting. And I've, again, included each water body and the proposed RU there for a one-year assessment. And with that, I'll stop and take any questions you have.
Good. Thanks for that presentation. Does anybody on the council have a question for Manager Wilson on these proposed assessments at Arrowhead Lake, Indian Head Lake, Lake Nancy, and the Mill Pond? All right. This again is a public hearing matter. It's Resolution 2022-85, which is a proposed aquatic vegetation special assessment. Is there anyone I'm going to open this up now for public testimony. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to testify regarding this matter? All right, hearing nothing. Again, if you want to call in to testify with regard to this matter, here's the phone number and the PIN number. Again, a reminder, press *1 to speak to the operator, and the operator will get you into Director Benarott. Director Benarott, do we have anybody holding in the queue?
We do not, sir. I would wait another 50 seconds or so before moving on, though.
All right.
Just to be sure. Want to give everyone a chance. I think you can move forward.
Thank you, Director Benarott. With regard to Resolution 2022-85, the proposed aquatic vegetation special assessments for residents around Arrowhead Lake, Indian Head Lake, Lake Nancy, and the Mill Pond, is there a motion to close the public hearing in this matter at noon on October 10, 2022, and continue the action on the item to the October 18, 2022 City Council meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion by Member Staunton, second by Member Jackson to adopt the motion as stated. Any further conversation? Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of the motion as stated, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. All right, good. Thank you, Manager Wilson. And our Engineering Director, Chad Milner, has the next two matters, which are public hearings on proposed street assessment matters.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Like the mayor said, we have 2 street reconstruction public hearings coming up. First, as we typically do, we share the results of our survey. How are we doing? How are we communicating? So I'll run through a few slides just discussing the results of that survey. So we did this for Melody Lake A and B, Birchcrest C, and Grandview A. We call that project Melody Lake. We've been calling that since we started. And then Creek Knoll, and these are both projects from 2021. So a couple location maps. This is the Melody Lake project, east of Hanson Road, north of Grove, and west of Highway 100. And then on the Creek Knoll is 54th Street to the south, France Avenue, east of France Avenue, and then west of the border there, and Minnehaha Creek on the east side. So the number of respondents, we've got 11% response rate from Melody Lake. We sent 279, and we got 30 respondents. Creek Knoll had 17%, so we'd love to see a little higher response rate, but these are the numbers that we got when we sent out the surveys. Here's just a comparison. So we averaged 13% 2021 response rate, and here's the last few years. You can see they've been kind of all over the board for response rates, depending on the year. First question, how effective was the communication prior to construction? So if you look at the first row, very left-hand side in 2021, that 58% coordinates to meetings, the 63% is letters, and the 59% is to the website. So every one of these tables will correlate like that. So, and then on that graph on the right-hand side, the green color is Melody Lake, and the black or the darker green is Creek Knoll. So you can see the comparisons to those 2 projects in the calendar year versus the averages from all the years. So when we look at how well was the communication from meetings, we had 58% said it was effective versus some of those other percentages over the years. Letters was 63%, and the website was 59%. So kind of falling in between all those various years. How effective was the communication you received during construction? So here we use letters, better together updates, door notices, and text messages, and you can see the results there under 2021. Generally in the 50%, compares reasonably with all the other responses over those same years. Did you understand that the project was funded by city utility funds in addition to special assessments? 63% said yes. 37% said no, so it was better than last year, lower than some years, but really kind of in that middle range. How effective was the project team, our team in understanding your construction-specific issue? 70% were very effective or somewhat effective in 2021, and you can see the response rates there per Melody Lake or Creek Knoll for comparison. Aside from weather-related delays, did the project team give you enough notice? So what are those items that we give them notice? Water shutoffs, driveway access, roadway access, and parking. Those are kind of the big things that we need to tell people on a short notice time frame. So we're clearly in the low to mid 70s, up to 82% on those items. Very good responses there, and compares very well to the previous year's results. And then we look for comments on a few different things. So what should we do, or what suggestions do you have to improve on our construction notices? Be consistent, go door to door, and more timely impacts to property and to revenue damage is a few. We did put all the results in your packets if you wanted to read those. How about suggestions for our overall neighborhood reconstruction process? So remember, we start communicating 3 years in advance of projects. We feel like we're communicating quite a bit on these, but what suggestions do you have? I just highlighted one where that says the project is too big. And we were in front of this council with Melody Lake and said, yes, it is too big, because we wanted to do it over 2 years, but we got a petition from the neighborhood and did it in 1. And we said it's going to be a challenge getting it done in 1 year, and we didn't quite get it done in 1 year. So just wanted to make sure we understood that. Same thing here, stop trying to do too much at once, and I think that was related to that bigger project. But what should we stop doing? That was the question here. You can see a few comments. Remember our conversations on sidewalks, hire people who care, stop narrowing streets, just to name a few. And what should we keep doing? So they mentioned the FaceTime with our team is great. The website section is good to keep, helps keep us accessible to the city employees, keep neighbors up to date on timeline, and keep trying to improve communications. And then do you have any general comments related to the project? So again, dust and noise is the one we hear all the time. There's not a way to get rid of that. Curbs are already showing some wear. And then the one I circled, that the engineer team was very responsive and professional. So I just wanted to call that out to the council, that I'm happy with our team and how they responded, and where there was some difficult times on these neighborhood projects. And I think they did a very, very good job of being responsive and professional when they're dealing with our residents. And then the last thing that we've talked quite a bit the last few months is that turf restoration. So we are working on a recommendation for future projects. I don't have that here tonight. I also wanted to remind the council about that water bill credit that you approved recently. But we'll be back to council hopefully before that public hearing for next year's project with a turf restoration policy for your approval. And again, we want to consider that triple bottom line of financial, social, and environmental impacts, not only for the residents, but also city staff and the city as a whole. So that's kind of the results of the survey. I'll take any questions on that. Otherwise, I'll go into the Creek Knoll public hearing.
Questions for Director Miller on the Melody Lake matter?
Or the survey results.
Member
Thank
Jackson.
you. Yes, thank you for pointing out the comments about that the project was too big. That was before I was on the council, and those comments really stuck out when I went through the survey. So, we'll keep that in the institutional memory, I hope.
Yeah.
Not to do that. It really had some implications for the project, so thanks.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, then we'll get into the, I think mine are out of order. So Creek Knoll is first. So we'll do the BA 459, which is the Creek Knoll neighborhood reconstruction from 2021. So again, this one had a petition. This neighborhood wanted their neighborhood done sooner. So 2018, we accepted a petition to do the project sooner. We were able to move it up from 2022 or 21 up to, or 22 up to 21. So we did do it a year sooner than was in our capital plan, but we were able to make that happen. We've had one formal written objection from that address, 3809 54th Street, and it had to do with cost and the funding policy, how streets are paid for. These were the costs for each individual kind of funding source, the utility funds, the PACs, and the street. On the bottom, you'll see the CIP estimate was 3.9. We came in at 3.4, so underneath our estimates for the capital improvement plan, which I think is good, about a 13% reduction. This is kind of midstream of our assessment policy discussions and that new policy that we approved in July of 2022. So when we first came to you in December of 2020, our preliminary assessment was $15,300. Per the revised policy in July of 2021, that was reduced to $12,100. And tonight, and on the 18th, I'm going to ask for approval of an assessment of $9,038.42 per residential equivalent unit. So I think that policy you approved, you're seeing the results right here of lower assessments to our residents. And then I would recommend we continue this public hearing till noon on October 10th and consider this on October 18th. I'd stand for any questions.
All right, questions for Director Milner on either of these proposed project assessments? All right, let's, with respect to the public hearing, let's take in sequence here. The Creek Knoll project is the first matter on our agenda. Let's take that one first. Open that up for public testimony. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to testify with regard to the proposed special assessment for what we call the Creek Knoll A and B neighborhood roadway reconstruction project? Okay, I'm hearing nothing and seeing no one coming forward. Director Benarott, let's go to the virtual world here and find out if anybody that's watching us wants to testify. Again, here's the phone number. If you want to testify with regard to the proposed special assessment for the Creek Knoll neighborhood, feel free to call in. If the motion goes as anticipated, you'll have until noon on October 10th to provide supplemental information, so keep that in mind as well.
Right now, my operator's very lonely. I can wait a minute or so before moving on if you'd like.
All right.
I think you can move forward now.
All right, thank you. With regard to Resolution 2022-86, which is the resolution dealing with the Creek Knoll A and B Neighborhood Roadway Reconstruction Project and the proposed special assessment for that project embodied in improvement number BA-459, is there a motion to close the public hearing on this matter at noon on October 10, 2022, and continue the action on the item to the October 18, 2022 City Council meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All right, we got a motion by Member Jackson, second by Member Anderson to adopt the motion as stated. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adopting the motion as stated with regard to the Creek Knoll A and B Neighborhood Roadway Reconstruction Special Assessment Project, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. And then let's open up testimony with regard to the Melody Lake project embodied in Resolution 2022-87. This matter is now open for public testimony. Is there anyone in the audience?
I'll go through the presentation first, Mayor,
Oh,
if I may.
all right. I thought you had,
No,
yeah, you
I just
hadn't done
did the survey
the,
results, not the,
all right.
not the
Thank you.
actual assessment. So thank you,
Let's
Mayor.
do that one.
We'll present now the results of our reconstruction there with Melody Lake A and B, Birchcrest C, and Grandview A. So again, that petition, we merged 2 construction years into one, so there was a very large project that we didn't quite get done in that calendar year, but it was completed this spring. There's been 4 objections. You can see those listed on the slide here. 1 was storm pipe, 1 was schedule and turf, 2 were cost and funding, and then there was a request to delay assessments from the resident at 5600 Dale Avenue. You received an email in that regard. So these are the relevant numbers post-construction of how we funded the project under streets, the various utility funds, and the PAX fund. And this one too came under our capital improvement plan estimate. It was 9% less than that capital plan estimate. Recall again, this is mid-block or midstream of the change to that assessment policy. So we had a discussion at December 20th at the public hearing, an assessment discussion, and that original amount was $24,200 in that report. And under state statute, we were allowed to delay that decision for up to 6 months. So we delayed it until April 20th of 2021. Staff came back, you made a decision and accepted preliminary assessments of $17,200 per RU. And that was a point where we took out subcuts and walls because that was a big discussion of the street funding task force. Then you approved that assessment policy in July of 21, and that assessment was reduced even further to $13,600. So you can see we went from $24,200 to $13,600 with the changes in the policy. I'm asking for approval of $11,711.51 per REU on this project. And I'd continue the public hearing until October 10th and consider approval on the 18th, and I'd stand for any questions related to this project.
Questions for Director Miller on this project proposed and the proposed assessment? Okay, that was good historical information there. That was very helpful. Thank you. All right, this is a public hearing matter as well. Let's open it up for testimony. This is on what we call the Melody Lake A and B, Birchcrest C, Grandview A Neighborhood Roadway Reconstruction Project, embodied in Improvement BA 457. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to testify regarding this matter and the proposed assessment? Yes, sir. Welcome.
Good morning, or good evening. My name is John Marker, and I live in the Melody Lakes area. I just wanted to go on record saying what a horrific process it was. I really have not much more to say, ultimately, than I appreciate the fact that the professionalism that was done post, but we've had a lot of problems with it. I think you know all about with regards to it not being finished because of being too large, the subcontractor not being able to finish with the work. But anything that, any surveys out that go up that shows anything in a positive light from any of the neighbors that I have spoken with is just plain wrong. And I just want you all to know about it, that the interface with the city, it just was a negative one. And I just want you to be aware of that. I have nothing else to say, but thank you for your time.
Mr. Marker, did you give us your address?
I live at 5704 Bernard Place.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the audience wish to testify regarding this matter? All right, let's go to people that might be listening in that wish to testify regarding this proposed special assessment embodied in improvement number BA 457?
We have no callers.
All right. Well, we're going to keep this matter open, I'm assuming, until October 10th, but let's get a motion on this matter. With regard to the resolution 2022-87, what we call the Melody Lake A and B, Birchcrest C, Grandview A neighborhood roadway reconstruction project, and the proposed special assessment, therefore, embodied in improvement number BA 457. Is there a motion to close the public hearing on this matter at noon on October 10, 2022, and continue the action on the item to the October 18, 2022 City Council meeting?
So moved.
Member Jackson moves.
Second.
Member Staunton seconds. The motion as stated. All those in favor of the adoption of the motion as stated, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. And then we're going to move on. Thank you, Director Milner, for those two matters. And folks, if you're interested in providing your thoughts, you have until noon on October 10th. Then we'll take it up at the next meeting of the City Council on October 18th. And now we've got a proposed special assessment for the properties down at 50th and France, and Derek Otten, our facilities manager, has this matter. And he's going to make that presentation now about the maintenance that we've been doing down at 50th and France.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. Excuse me.
Go ahead.
Yes, tonight I'll be presenting on the 50th and France Business District. This is improvement number M 2022, from the calendar year 2021. Just a quick highlight of the area that we're talking about. This encompasses the 50th and France Business District. To the south, it's bordered on 51st Street. On the east, it's France Avenue. On the west, it's Halifax Market. And then on the north, it is Market Street as well. Some quick highlights here. Some of the shaded areas you see are the privately owned businesses. There's two large structures, both on the north and south end of the area, that are public-owned parking ramps that the city provides. In 2021, we spent $430,660.37 to maintain that area. Most of those improvements are around staff time for ice and snow removal, trash removal, but it also includes minor improvements to the district for walkways and surfaces throughout. So the accessible square footage, there was a jump in 2021 that's reflected here as well, of 452,347 square feet, and that's mainly contributed to the Nolan Mains development that happened. Some of the increase in costs for 2021 included structural repairs to the south ramp, where we had some vehicular damage, and then we replaced a number of trees on France Avenue as well as on 50th Street, the Edina side. And there was a few things for COVID precautions this past year, as there have been in past years. So my recommendation is that we continue with the public hearing until October 12th, and then we consider approval on October 18th. And with that, I'll stand for questions.
Did you want to continue to October 12th or October 10th?
I will continue October 10th. I think at the time I wrote this, it was the 12th, though.
Consistent with the other matters we've heard tonight?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, good. Thank you, Manager Otten. Any questions for Manager Otten from council members? Yes, Member Jackson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I just have to ask about salt policy. If we're talking the 50th in France, I know that people are always concerned about that. Is that part of the contract that we make sure that we monitor how much salt's put down on those sidewalks?
We do, yes. We actually use city staff for the maintenance of all those sidewalks. They have gone through smart salt training through the 9 Mile Creek Watershed District and others. And then we've also implemented the businesses throughout to do smart salting as well when they're taking care of their own walkways and surfaces.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Other questions from council members? All right. This is a public hearing matter. Is there anyone in the audience? I'm going to open it up now for public testimony. Anybody in the audience wish to address the council on this matter? Okay. Let's turn now to Director
I still
Penrod.
don't have anyone,
All
but
right.
we should wait a minute on this one since we've had no other testimony. I'll come back to you at 8:21 or when I have a caller, whichever is first.
Okay.
think it's safe for you to move forward.
All right, thank you. For council members, with regard to Resolution 2022-88, which are the proposed 50th and France special assessments, is there a motion to close the public hearing on that matter at noon on October 10, 2022, and continue the action on the item to the October 18, 2022 City Council meeting?
So moved.
Second.
A motion by Member Jackson, second by Member Anderson to adopt the motion as stated. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of the motion as stated say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. And then the final public hearing matter we have tonight is a matter that is going to be presented by Emily Boddicker, our Assistant City Planner. We had an appeal from a decision of the Heritage Preservation Commission on a certificate of appropriateness for the address 4633 Arden Avenue. Ms. Boddicker is going to make the staff presentation, and then Andy Schilling, the chair of the Heritage Preservation Commission, has a brief presentation as well. Then we're going to hear from the appellant, the entity that filed the appeal, and that's Great Neighborhood Homes and their representatives. So I'm going to turn now to Ms. Boddicker to give us a background on this issue.
Yes. Thank you, Mayor and City Council. Tonight I'm going to present the appeal of an HPC decision at 4633 Arden. 4633 Arden Avenue is located within the historic Country Club District. It's located on the east side of Arden, just north of Country Club Road. A certificate of appropriateness application was submitted to the city in May of 2021 for the demolition of an attached garage and the construction of a new detached garage, a second floor addition that was visible from the street-facing facade, changes to the existing dormer, and changes to the entryway. The plan submitted with the COA request noted that the existing brick was to remain and was noted as one of the materials for the new garage. Those bricks were going to be reused, and then there was going to be matching bricks that were included in those building materials as well. The COA was approved by the Heritage Preservation Commission on April 13th, and one of the conditions of approval with that COA was that any changes to the proposed plans would require review from the city's Heritage Preservation Commission. Staff had been in contact with the contractor throughout the permitting process, and ultimately the building permit for the project was issued October 18th of 2021, and that building permit was for the remodel and addition. Staff was notified November of 2021 that the existing brick on the home was removed. Staff reached out to the contractor at that time to ask about the removal of the brick, and at the time the contractor informed staff that when they started removing the brick from the rear of the home, where an addition was planned to be placed, the weather barrier was deteriorated or non-existent. He noted that the brick was not salvageable, it was too brittle, and it broke apart. He informed staff that the plan was to replace the brick with a similar brick after installing an appropriate weather barrier. And at that time, staff asked the builder to submit the proposed building materials for review. Throughout winter, staff continued to remind the builder that review by the HPC was required, and staff continued to receive inquiries and different complaints about the state of the property. And on May 17th, 2022, a stop work order was issued after staff was out on site after a complaint was received about windows being open and the house being exposed to the elements. The contractor had permission to install house wrap and to protect the sheathing, and noted that all windows needed to be kept closed or kept weather tight. And they were notified that the project would need to go back to the city's Heritage Preservation Commission for changes to the original COA that was issued, which included the building materials. The builder submitted information for an amendment to the issued COA in June of 2022. The builder's proposed brick selection, Tundra brick, was submitted for review by the city's Heritage Preservation Commission. The submittal also included proposed elevations that noted the addition of a small dormer window. The proposed changes were reviewed at the July 2022 HPC meeting, and at that meeting, after discussion, HPC continued the item in which the applicant was agreeable to at that time. The HPC noted additional changes on the proposed elevation that were not called out by the applicant. The Heritage Preservation Commission expressed that they wanted to see building material options that were more in line with the Secretary of the Interior Standards of Rehabilitation, and wanted the proposed changes on the elevations to be explained. For the August 2022 HPC meeting, the builder submitted 3 different building materials for their review, one being a tundra brick, which is a brick veneer, the second being a modular winter mist brick, which is a full brick product, and the third option was a Welshire tumbled brick with a painted finish, and that was also a full brick option. The Heritage Preservation Commission discussed the proposed building materials and approved option 2, the modular winter mist, which was one of the full brick materials. They approved that as the approved replacement material, and the Heritage Preservation Commission felt that this option most aligned with the Secretary of the Interior Standards for Rehabilitation and the city's Country Club Plan of Treatment. The Heritage Preservation Commission also discussed changes on the elevation, which included the size of the larger dormer, the size of the windows in the larger dormer, the size of the window in the smaller dormer, the change in window size on the first floor, and the addition of a small dormer window above the bay window. The Heritage Preservation Commission denied changes to the facade because they felt that there was not sufficient information to prove why the dormer would have to be larger structurally. They felt that they didn't have the information for how the changes proposed met the city's plan of treatment, and they didn't feel that the changes to the windows and the dormers were appropriate and proportionate in scale. In reviewing the certificates of appropriateness and COA amendments, the plan of treatment refers to the Secretary of the Interior Standards of Rehabilitation. And the Heritage Preservation Commission with this project looked at those standards of rehabilitation and took these 4 specifically into consideration when making their decision. The historic character of a property shall be retained and preserved. The removal of historic materials or alteration shall be avoided. Deteriorated historic features shall be repaired rather than be replaced, and where the severity of deterioration requires replacement, the new feature shall match the old in design, color, texture, and other visual qualities, and where possible should match materials. The third being distinctive features, finishes, and construction techniques should be preserved. And new additions, exterior alterations, or related new construction should not destroy historical materials that characterize the property. The new work shall be differentiated from the old and be compatible in massing, size, scale, architectural features to protect the historic integrity. The Heritage Preservation Commission took action at the August meeting, and that decision for the approval of option 2 and the denial of the changes to the street-facing facade are what is being appealed tonight. So staff's recommendation is to continue the public hearing until October 10th at noon and to take action at the October 18th meeting. So I can take any questions at this time. Otherwise, I will pass it to Annie Schilling, the chair of the Heritage Preservation Commission, to speak.
Any questions for Ms. Boddicker at this point in time? All right, let's go to Chair Schilling for her comments, and then we'll go to the appellant.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you as well, City Council members. I appreciate you allowing me to give voice tonight as I represent the hard and important work of the Heritage Preservation Commission. Emily just gave a review of events. I'm here for a bit more clarification. I'm going to use some important quotes that helped us arrive at these decisions that Emily just reviewed. The primary objective of the Country Club Heritage Landmark District is preservation of the existing historic house facades and streetscapes. Quote, the historic character of a property will be retained and preserved. The removal of distinctive materials or alteration of features, spaces, and spatial relationships that characterize a property will be avoided. That's from our guiding document, the Plan of Treatment. Quote, it's not about what they look like. It's not the National Register of pretty places. It's historic places. So there has to be historic stuff. That's a quote from the City of Edina Heritage Preservation Consultant Robert Vogel at our June 2022 meeting. In respect to the dormer, further enlargement of the dormer and the addition of a net new window were rejected because the totality of the changes being requested by the applicant, especially when coupled with the applicant's new siding product, would, in the eyes of the HPC and, per the plan of treatment, destroy too much, essentially the entirety of the property's original historic elements and character of the street-facing facade. With respect to the brick, quote, distinctive materials will be repaired rather than replaced. That's from our plan of treatment. Quote, where the severity of deterioration requires replacement of its distinctive feature, the new feature will match the old in design, color, texture, and, where possible, materials. That's from our plan of treatment. Quote, the best practice for replacing old brick is to use new brick that duplicates the old as closely as possible. Again, from our heritage preservation consultant, Robert Vogel, at our August 22 meeting. Quote, with respect to approval of materials, the HPC may not make a decision which is arbitrary and capricious. The HPC must apply the standards of the plan of treatment. That is from our city attorney, David Kendall, in his memo for the May 2022 HPC meeting. Quote, to be totally honest with you, my wife does not like the look of Chicago brick. And so we probably would have been painting it. So I said, you know, I'd rather not do a whole home and paint that brick. That's a quote from our applicant at our July 2022 meeting. Tundra brick is a veneer, an imitative product. It's not brick, it's not made of clay. Its character is artificially molded and stamped. It's an imitation, albeit pretty. Tundra brick, therefore, does not meet the requirements of the plan of treatment, the best practice articulated by the city consultant, or the mandate of our city attorney. There is no veneer brick product in the historic district. Approving this sets a precedent. That's the slippery slope. With respect to timing, the applicant has made comments to neighbors and to the council about the HPC delaying their progress with this project. This is not true. Let me review again. In April of 21, the HPC unanimously approves a COA. 6 months later, Great Neighborhood Homes applies for a permit in October of 21. 7 months later, the city, not the Heritage Preservation Commission, revokes both the certificate of appropriateness and the building permit. That's May of 22. 2 months later, the HPC is presented with an amended certificate of appropriateness. Based on their clear dissatisfaction with our feedback, the HPC does offer to reject the COA so the applicant can expedite an appeal. The applicant declines, deciding instead to come back to the next meeting. That was July of 22. In August of 22, the HPC approves a COA for construction to resume without the window changes, but with an approval brick as submitted by the applicant. 2 months later, here we are. The HPC is not responsible for the delays. The last time I was here, Councilwoman Jackson made a point of highlighting the HPC system generally works. I will offer that the HPC system can work, but it's requests like this, and certainly approvals of requests like this, that are the number one threat to this process and the integrity of this historic neighborhood. If the council chooses to ignore the plan of treatment, the city code, state law for one or all applicants, the system is broken. I am fearful of the precedents that could be set. I am fearful of the process failing. Councilwoman Jackson, you said it's not broken. This is our opportunity to prove that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Schilling.
I'm here for any questions.
Questions for Chair Schilling? On anything related to the actions of the Heritage Preservation Commission? So just to be clear, what you did was you approved the change in the brick.
The
with that number
applicant-
2, and you denied the request for the addition of a new window.
That's correct. At that
in
meeting,
the
we were
dormer.
presented 3 choices of replacement product by the applicant, and we did approve one of the 3 that the applicant brought to us. We did deny the changes for the dormer and the additional net new window at that meeting.
All right, thank you. All right, we're going to turn now to the applicant, Great Neighborhood Homes, or the appellant. And Scott Busen is with us this evening, and I think he has an attorney with him, Brian Huntington from Larkin Hoffman, and they'll have 15 minutes to make their presentation, which is about what the staff had. Then we'll take other public hearing testimony, both live and by
I'm sorry. Thank you, Mayor
virtual
and Council.
participation. Yes.
Scott Busen, 4633 Arden Avenue, my current address. I'm residing at 4121 50th Street when we're doing this project. I appreciate you taking the opportunity to listen to this appeal, the denial of the COA. The goals of 4633 Arden, we've lived in Country Club for 12 years with our family. We purchased 4633 Arden to create an empty nester home with a main floor master with bedrooms upstairs for our grown children to visit. Edina's common plan talks about there's a shortage of this type of home, and we felt this home was a candidate to create an empty nester home. We also want to maintain the historic character of the home while making a compatible use for the home, and at the same time integrate green building techniques. We have worked in Country Club for over 10 years. We successfully renovated over 8 homes in the district while keeping with the goals of the plan of treatment. The bigger picture is 4505 Arden, upper right corner is 4620 Moreland, lower right's 4615 Wooddale. And then we recently completed a renovation working through the Heritage Preservation Commission at 4630 Drexel, and that's a very similar type of project that we're doing at 4633 Arden. Here's the renovation plan. Our goal is to maintain the original architecture. And with that, we retain 50% of the exterior walls. The COA amendment request was to replace existing deteriorated brick with tundra brick. We also wanted a white brick look that requires no maintenance versus putting up brick and then painting it and the resulting long-term maintenance. We wanted to add a small window to the main gable for natural light in the future grandchildren's playroom. We also wanted to slightly expand the width of the dormer to allow for stairway headroom, insulation, and flashing. So reasons for replacing the brick. We obtained a building permit on 10/18/21. With the building permit issue, we started to remodeling work on the home. We started removing the exterior brick from the rear and sides of the home where the addition was going to go, and we realized soon that the existing brick was deteriorated and that there was an insufficient weather barrier to maintain a drainage plane behind the brick. The one layer of building paper was crumbling and brittle. The paper had insufficient coverage as it was not lapped properly in a waterfall fashion, and the paper was not nailed sufficiently and had nail holes. There was also no flashing over the windows. We continued to remove brick and realized that the inadequate weather barrier was an issue on the front of the home as well. The front brick was also deteriorated and crumbling and could not be reused as we had intended. We do not believe removing the brick was a problem, as a plan of treatment for Country Club District, the POT, clearly states that a COA is not required for removal of existing siding on a home. And we were in the middle of our project, and part of our renovation project is to determine the condition of the existing home. The existing brick was not reusable as it was crumbling, and we could recover very few whole bricks. Here's pictures of the weather barrier. You can see there's no lapping on it. It's very brittle, crumbling, and there's a lot of deterioration. The last thing we want to do is do a big renovation on a home and have a water issue. And the city inspector would not allow it as well. There you can see the lack of flashing over the window and the crumbling brick. So the replacement with tundra brick versus original brick, I've got samples here I'll show you. So here on the top is the existing brick from the home. that I painted.
We still need the mic, please.
I'm sorry? Here, on the top is the existing brick, and the bottom is a Tundra brick. I painted the existing brick, which was our intent, and you can see how the Tundra brick matches it in depth, width, and texture. It's really the best product we found that gives us the old vintage tumbled look on the home. So you can see that there. And then why we propose it, our masonry supplier advises that using the same brick is not feasible under today's code. The only thing available is a reclaimed Chicago brick that does not comply with today's standards for construction grade SW, as it is a higher absorption rate than brick that are manufactured today. And we saw that on the old brick. There was a lot of spalling and crumbling. The water penetrates that brick. The Tundra brick material duplicates the original brick as close as possible among options we consider. The Secretary of Interior Standards for Rehabilitation states that if using the same kind of material is not technically or economically feasible, then a compatible substitute may be considered. The plan of treatment states where the severity of deterioration requires replacement of a distinctive feature, the new feature will match the old design, color, texture, and where possible materials. And I think we've shown that here, how we're matching that per the plan of treatment. The Tundra brick, when installed and viewed from the street, will have the same face, height, width, depth, and texture as the old brick. It is a veneer, as we talked about, so we have insulation behind it, you can see here. But there are corners on it, so we'll get the depth of the corners. And when we do window insets, the window insets will be set back, just like you have on real brick. Consultant Robert Vogel reported at the 11 meeting said, regarding replacement of historic brick wall cladding, the Secretary of Interior Standards for Rehabilitation state that the deteriorated architectural features should be repaired rather than replaced whenever possible. However, if replacement is necessary, the new material should match a material being replaced in composition, design, color, texture, and other visual qualities, which I'm showing you here. The best practice for replacing old brick is to use new brick that duplicates the old as close as possible. This assumes that the actual historic brick used in the original construction is no longer available. It is unlikely that the face brick used in 1938 is still being manufactured, which is true. The Tundra brick will also allow us to achieve our goal as home participating in Edina's climate action plan. I'm a builder, it's my own home. I really want to build this home code plus. Under Section 3 of the Building Energy of the Climate Action Plan, it talks about increasing adoption of high-performance building construction technology, achieving 5% net zero community-wide by 2023. So this product here allows us to put 2 inches of foam on the outside of the house and then put the brick over that. It still gets the same depth, same appearance from the street, and it allows us to achieve the goals of exterior insulation of the Edina Climate Action Plan. So this is where we put the insulation behind the brick, as you see here, and then still have the same depth of brick that's on the original home. There was some concern at the HPC that there's not other white brick homes in the neighborhood, and I've just shown you there's pictures here I've got of 6 different homes. HPC precedents approving modern materials in the district. The HPC and Planet Treatment has set precedents for allowing replacement of original exterior materials with modern construction materials, both James Hardy siding for wood clapboard and metal roofs. And here's some homes that have that throughout the district. The small window over the main gable requested amendment to COA to add light to our future grandkids' playroom. Small windows are common in the district. Consultant Vogel said with respect to the proposed addition, the impact on the district should be minimized. No historical important architectural details will be destroyed. And then expanding the dormer. After the COA was approved, we submitted our building permit. And they did see this expanded dormer on the building permit. It was reviewed by planning and building, and they did approve it. So it was approved in October of 21. The HPC looked at it again in July and decided they didn't like it. So they said we had to apply for a COA even though we had an approved building permit. And the reason for the expanded dormer is for stairway headroom, getting us full insulation, and then flashing. So it's common that we go from a sketch to a blueprint. There'll be some subtle changes in the architecture. And this, again, a consultant Vogel backed up that it does not destroy the historic character of the building with a shed dormer. Thank you for considering this. We're longtime residents of Country Club. We really don't want to renovate a home in a way that would hurt the historic character of the district. As a local builder, I also not want to design this renovation in a way that would impact our business brand. I do believe it's important that Country Club plan of treatment and decisions by the HPC strike a balance between government regulation and private stewardship. We feel our project, its proposal, will maintain and enhance the historic character of the district while rehabilitating a home for the next generation of homeowners. And I've got my counsel here. Brian Huntington from Larkin Hoffman. Thank you.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
You have 6 minutes remaining in your presentation.
Thank you. Well, good evening. Before I launch into the substantive presentation, I want to make sure in your staff packets you received the letter that I sent in mid-September. Okay, perfect. So, oh, okay, great. I'd like to just immediately respond to some of the points that were made here by the representative of the HPC. There were references made to the Secretary of the Interior standards, and in fact, a lot of the comments that you'll see online relate to those standards. Understand that those standards are, quote, advisory, unless there's demolition as defined by the plan of treatment or new construction. There isn't here. The point is, when the city code adopted by resolution 2008-41 the amendments to the plan of treatment, they found that the threat, the most important threat, in the words of the resolution, were tear downs. And they found that the loss of historic integrity caused by inappropriate remodeling and additions was comparatively small. That's the exact language of the resolution. So the city council said you need a certificate of appropriateness when you've got demolition, and I note that there was no discussion from the HPC tonight, and they just glossed over it during their presentation of does the definition even fit of new construction or demolition? The answer clearly is no. With respect to the brick issue, it's clear, quote, this definition does not include removal of existing siding. That should be the end of the inquiry. There was no jurisdiction. The stop work order that's in effect, which, by the way, we would oppose any continuance of the public hearing. This public hearing was already set for September. As was just noted, the stop work order has been in effect since May. We want to get this property, the siding up. There's been plenty of opportunity for public comment. We're respectfully asking that this body act tonight because it's very clear. If you look at the secretary, if you look at the plan of treatment, it's very clear that none of the elements of this project meet either of the definitions with respect to when you even need a certificate of appropriateness in the first place. And those are binding, by the way. The only authority that that body has is the authority you give them, okay? You've limited their authority by the plan of treatment. I agree with the comment from the city attorney that they are bound to follow this. And there is case law where city councils adopt by resolution restrictions on their agencies and commissions, and the commission fails to follow it and it goes to court, and the courts say absolutely, if they approve a limitation on their authority, which, by the way, they have agreed to this limitation, and a definition of demolition, which is an ambiguous term. When you have an ambiguous term, the law requires that you interpret it in favor of the landowner. They've adopted this definition. They're bound by it. You should reverse the appeal on that basis. You should reverse the denial of the certificate of appropriateness on that basis. Here is the city code provisions. This is it. Only in these 4 specific circumstances must a COA be obtained. And here is the full definition. We quote provisions here which talk about voluntary compliance. Well, again, these standards of treatment, when they talk about the Secretary of Interior standards, those are recommendations for voluntary compliance, but they're not prescriptive requirements for which you need to seek a certificate of appropriateness. And that even says it right there. Although not ordinarily subject to certificates of appropriateness, small additions or minor alterations should. Okay, that's a recommendation, but that's not mandatory. That doesn't require a certificate of appropriateness. And that's made very clear. If you look at your consultant, Mr. Vogel, if you look at the statements at the time that the revised plan of treatment was adopted, here he's saying, quote, the protection, repair, and replacement of exterior features on historic homes is left to the homeowners. The HPC does not have authority to tell a homeowner when they're putting on a different type of siding, you must select this type of siding and not that type of siding. That is not within the jurisdiction of that body, at least as defined by this city council. And again, that's authority that recognizes any court reviewing your plan of treatment, reviewing your ordinances, are going to interpret them in favor of the landowner wanting to use the property in his desired way. So what we're asking for the city council to do this evening is to grant the appeal, reverse the decision of the commission, find that the project didn't require review because it didn't meet the definition of demolition or new construction, and rescind the stop work order, which remains in effect to this day. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Busen, I've got a question for you. There was, in the presentation by staff and by the chair of the Heritage Preservation Commission, they talked about you coming with 3 different options in terms of exterior material. 2 of them were actual bricks, and then the other one was the tundra brick that you just showed us. And is the inference to be drawn? They approved a full type of brick.
Yes, I have it here.
So are you here tonight saying you don't like that decision that they made on that, even though you offered up one of 3 styles of brick?
Correct.
For their selection?
Correct. At the July meeting, I tried to present the tundra brick, and they said we don't like that. I said, what should I do? And they will say, well, show us other things to compare it to. So I brought the other 3 bricks to show them the only other options I could find in white brick. And again, why I felt that tundra brick was the most historically relevant for the project.
So your appeal involves both of those issues, the siding issue, if you will, the brick. You prefer the tundra brick versus number 2 choice that the Heritage Preservation Board made, and you object to them denying you the right to put that window into the dormer.
Yeah, the slight expansion of the dormer and then the small playroom window. So the brick, the expansion of the dormer, and then the playroom window. There's 3 items.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I've got the brick they approved here. I can show you how it's different if you want to see it.
All right. If anybody wants to see it. All right. Thanks for that clarification. Prompt any questions from council members? Member Anderson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have a couple questions. The appellant states that the continuous insulation installation, it's also referenced in the climate action plan, can't be installed without the brick removal. That's accurate, I presume?
Can't be installed without what?
Without brick removal.
Correct.
So that's why the brick came off.
That was one of the reasons. I mean, the intent was to use the original brick. We started the project and the deconstruction. We found the weather barrier was insufficient behind the old brick, and the only way to replace that was to remove the brick.
Yeah, so in order to observe the continuous installation, the brick had to come off. That's
Correct.
Okay, thank you. There's no other way to achieve it. You can't do it internally. You can't use like 5 mil inside.
No, because it's outside of the sheeting. So the weather barrier goes outside of the sheeting, and then there's the insulation and the brick.
And so when you did that, you found that the brick was crumbling.
Correct.
Correct, and so it would have to be replaced.
Correct.
Thank you. All right, and that the replacement brick is no longer available. I think you stated that earlier.
Correct.
As well. And so what this really comes down to in terms of the brick, it's only, in terms of the brick itself, it's just essentially your choice versus the recommendation from the HPC.
Correct.
Thank you. I do want to ask a question. I'm not sure who to ask it of, because in the last paragraph of your appeal letter, you mentioned that disparaging comments were made on the developer's work in the country club neighborhood. Is that accurate?
Yes.
If so, on what basis? Do you know what basis those comments
I feel
were
that
made
we
on?
were, they said they were looking at our project with a sharper focus because of our reputation in the neighborhood and how we've worked on other projects. And I know there was some comments at work session with council that they were looking at revising the plan of treatment because of an aggressive developer.
Okay. Chair Schilling, do you have any comment on that or clarification?
I will say that the Heritage Preservation Commission takes each decision on its own. We look at the applicant's presentation that's given to us in the packet, and we review it each case by case on its own against our guiding documents.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Member Jackson, did you have something?
Yeah, I have a brief question. So this is just a building question, actually. With brick, once you paint it, is it permanently painted or can the paint be removed?
The paint will, brick expels moisture. It'll pop the paint off. You can use a mineral brick, which is a little better, but if you're really going to do something that's going to last, you don't paint it, just like you don't like to paint stucco. Because houses, in the wintertime, they dry to the outside, so moisture that gets in the wall, it expels through the wall system. It'll put pressure on that paint. And then in the wintertime, in the summertime, houses dry to the inside, because insides are dry and cool.
Okay, thank you.
Member Sutton?
So is it your position that you can put whatever siding on the building that you want to?
That's not what I said.
No, I'm asking. You're saying that you don't have, that the commission can't dictate which brick.
I think
so.
It's the plan of treatment talks about voluntary compliance. You should do these things. So we presented the thing that we felt that was the most historically appropriate.
Right.
I don't think I can put vinyl siding on the house. If you, for
instance, said that I wanted to put pink vinyl siding on the house, do you think that would be? Do you think that would be contrary to the plan of treatment?
Yes.
Okay. Why?
Because I don't think it reflects the historic character of the district.
Okay. I have a couple of questions for Mr. Huntington, too.
Can I address your last question?
Sure.
With respect, my answer to that would be the plan of treatment, which this council approved, which the HBC approved, says demolition doesn't include siding. So yes,
so you
as
say
this body has approved, you could change it, but as this body has approved, siding does not fall within the criteria. We looked at your ordinance, we looked at your code, and your code says these are the only circumstances where you need to get a certificate of appropriateness.
Okay. So then, The plan of treatment is adopted by resolution, right?
Yes.
And is the ordinance, does the city have the authority to adopt something by resolution that would exceed or be contrary to the ordinance?
Well, I don't agree that it's contrary to the ordinance. I think.
No, I'm just saying, do we?
I would say if there was a direct conflict between a resolution and an ordinance, it's questionable whether that would be sustained. In this case, you have an ambiguous definition, and you have a resolution which then clarifies that definition. But
right, to the point where you're saying that it's not demolition to put pink vinyl siding on a house.
Correct.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
But if I can add one more thing.
Sure.
The resolution, and I have cited this case to your council as well, there is case law that says even if it's not by ordinance, even if this council has not by ordinance defined demolition, if your commission approves a restriction on its authority, and this council also approves that restriction, that's binding. That is binding in the courts. And at a minimum, I would say a court would look at, if you have a term and you've then defined that term by resolution, that is going to be the definition that's going to be applied, certainly.
All right, thank you. I have nothing further.
Prompt anything further from council members? All right, this is a public hearing matter, and I'm going to open it up now for any further public testimony from anyone in the audience that hasn't had an opportunity to speak yet. Please feel free to come forward. You'll have 3 minutes to make your presentation. You'll get a yellow light when you've got 30 seconds left, and then you can wrap up your comments. Anyone in the audience wish to come forward and testify regarding this matter?
My name is Robert Cundy. I live at 4521 Drexel Avenue in the district. We are exactly where I told you all that we would be, and sooner than I expected we would get there. With respect to council, I wholly disagree with their interpretation of city code and the application of the plan of treatment. City code states in section 36-722, to protect significant heritage resources, the Heritage Preservation Board shall, where shall is defined as mandatory, review all applications for city permits, which the removal and replacement of siding would be included, for the following types of work in relation to a designated heritage landmark: demolition of any building or structure in whole or in part, moving a building or structure to another location, excavation of archaeological features, or new construction, where neither demolition nor new construction within the code are defined terms. Earlier in the zoning code, it states that where this section of the code is more restrictive than any other code, ordinance, or resolution, this code shall take precedence. Where anything else is more restrictive, which in zoning terms means narrower, that code shall prevail. So while the applicant has decided to take a very narrow view of demolition, it doesn't matter, because demolition in the code is more restrictive because it says in whole or in part. The other thing that I would challenge is that new construction is not defined anywhere, and the code says or new construction. If we pulled back up the presentation that Ms. Boddicker gave, it says alterations, additions, and related new construction. Related new construction means that new construction, in its plain and ordinary meaning, lowercase n, lowercase c, is hammer and nails. Anyone who would say, oh, they're doing new construction on that home, is regulatory with respect to the plan of treatment. So I'm glad council agrees that we are bound to the code. He said it, I heard it. His misinterpretation binds his client to the very things that they're trying to avoid. Lastly, I'd like to add that there were disparaging comments, and there are people who are concerned about great neighborhood homes, and I'm one of those individuals. They mentioned that they have 8 homes in the neighborhood. Would it interest council that 4 of those homes went from being contributing historical resources on district surveys before the project was completed to non-historically contributing resources when the project was over? In fact, the last time that this council heard an appeal, this applicant was before you arguing that a change on one of the houses that they showed a picture of would not destroy the historic character of the neighborhood. Residents disagreed and appealed that decision. You all, as a council, not many of you here, decided with the applicant, and guess what? 4 years later, that property fell off. The latest property that they're talking about, 4630, in April of this year, consultant Vogel, who they love to quote, said that he thought as a result of their project, the historic integrity had been destroyed. The project one of the other projects that they put up there, they argued during that appeal, we removed 100% of the exterior, 80% of the structure, 100% of the interior, and 50% of the foundation. It's not the historic neighborhood of pretty places. It's a National Historic Registry of Historic Places. Has to have historic stuff. This developer comes in and they take out the historic stuff. They ask for it, and if you allow it, they'll do it. They ask for it, and if you don't allow it, they do it anyway. Like the brick, like the property at 4630 Drexel, like others in the neighborhood. It has to stop. And if you don't stop it, then 100 people could come in here tomorrow, apply for the same thing, and the neighborhood would be gone. There are so many inaccuracies in everything they said. I'm going to send you guys a letter. You all know that I came to that work plan meeting and I told you that this exact thing was going to happen with this exact developer on these exact same grounds. I know that you're sort of sick of me ringing this bell and sounding the alarm, but I was right, and I've been right about it all, and I hope you read the full details, because everything that was just said is just unsubstantiated by code, history, all of it. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cundy. Anyone else? All right. Let's see if we have anybody online that wishes to testify. Let's get that phone number up there. If you wish to testify regarding this matter, you can do it this evening, or you'll have, I think, until the 10th of October at noon to send anything in supplementally.
I do not have any callers, and it's been over a minute since this public hearing began.
All right. All right. With regard to the certificate of appropriateness appeal on 4633 Arden Avenue, is there a motion to close the public hearing on this matter at noon on October 10, 2022, and continue the action on the item to the October 18, 2022 City Council meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion by Member Anderson, second by Member Stoughton to adopt the motion as stated. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adopting the motion as stated say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. All right, we're going to move on now to the reports and recommendations portion of the agenda. And the first matter there is a resolution 2022-95 accepting donations. And we've got one donation to the city within this reporting period. First of all, is there a motion to adopt resolution 2022-95?
So moved.
Second.
We got a motion by Member Stoughton, second by Member Jackson to adopt resolution 2022-95, which would accept donations on behalf of the city of Edina. Any further discussion on the adoption of the motion? All those in favor of adoption of resolution 2022-95 say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. We've got one very, very generous donation this reporting period, and that is from resident Donna Hips to the Park and Rec Department in the amount of $3,200 for a park bench at St. John's Park. So thank you, Donna Hips, for that generous donation. Now let's go on to resolution 2022-77. Director Teague has this next matter, and this involves work we've been doing for many, many years on the former Public Works site at 5146 Eden Avenue. Director Teague.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, members of council. We're going to begin tonight with Economic Development Manager Neuendorf, and then I'll give the overview of what the specific request is.
All right, very good. Our Economic Development Manager, Bill Neuendorf, is with us as well, who's been integrally involved in all these different iterations and possibilities on the old Public Works site, and we're here to discuss the most recent notion that we have and how to develop this property here. So Manager Neuendorf, welcome.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, good evening, and council. The proposal in front of you tonight is one that we presented about a month ago. Same proposal, no changes to it. This is the HRA-owned property near Jerry's Food and the railroad tracks, the city's former public works site. As you alluded to, this is the 10th different concept that we've explored over the years on this property. We've looked at quite a variety based on a lot of community input that was provided over the last 10 to 12 years. The current proposal consists of senior cooperative housing. 90% would be priced for sale at market rates. 10% would be affordably priced. And these are for sale units, something that has not been delivered in the marketplace for many, many years. The second element is something that was very popular as we did our community engagement, a restaurant. This would not just be a simple restaurant, it'd be multiple levels, the type of restaurant that has activated indoor spaces and activated outdoor spaces. You've seen those site plans. And while those are the two privately owned pieces, there would also be a third element on the site, which is the public park or the public green space that anchors the northern portion of the site and really starts to create a heart in this Grandview district. So at this point, the HRA is under contract with United Properties for the senior co-op, and we are under contract with Jester Concepts for the restaurant. Those contracts were executed earlier this summer. We've done a lot of work on this one, as you're well aware. In the audience tonight, we do have Brent Frederick with Jester, Alex Hall with United Property should be right behind us. We're running quite a bit earlier than we expected. So, and then Terry Minarik is with us as well. He's been our site and landscape architect that's really drawn these three separate elements together. So we'll be available for any questions. We have the packets available as well, but we have no new information at this time, but just want to be responsive to any questions you might have. And I'll turn it back to Director Teague.
All right. Thank you, Manager Neuendorf. Director Teague?
Okay. Yep. Thank you, Mayor, members of council. So the specific request is for preliminary rezoning from the current zoning of Planned Industrial District to PUD. So we would be establishing a new zoning ordinance specific for this site. They're requesting some code flexibility through the PUD for setbacks to bring the building a little closer to the roadway, height, building material, parking. We're reliant on the Jerry's parking ramp for the restaurant, which would be phase 2. One thing about that phase 2, they would come back through the Planning Commission and City Council for the specific details, approvals for that. So this is a multi-phase project. The first phase is the senior co-op. This project was reviewed by Planning Commission, and their recommendation was a split vote, 3-3. Staff is recommending approval, so we would recommend that you grant approval, preliminary approval of Resolution 2277, and it would be first reading of the zoning ordinance to establish the district. We did receive more comments on Better Together since you held the public hearing. They were mixed, some in favor, some against. Those that were against had concern over density, some of the concerns that some of the Planning Commission members expressed wanting more out of the site. So with that, we'll turn it back to the council for decision. And we're here to answer any questions you may have as well.
Good. Thank you, Director Teague. Yeah, it's something that we've worked on extensively, and I think we've had great discussions and have marched forward on this idea of the 3 different uses, and I'm eager to hear what my colleagues have to say about this this evening. Does anybody have any questions for any of the folks that are here that are part of the, I'll call them the broader development team. We've got United Properties, Alex Hall, that is with us this evening to answer any questions about the senior co-op idea that we had, and have tentatively struck an agreement with them on. Terry Menarek from Confluence, who has come up, his organization, with some great notions around that park space. And then, of course, Brent Frederick at Gesture Concepts with the restaurants here as well. Any questions for any of those folks from council members? All right. Thoughts from council members? Member Jackson, you want to lead off? Or?
Well, I can lead off. This has been a long process, and as a new council member, I have to say, when we first started talking about this, we had a meeting with the previous council in November after I was elected, and so this has loomed really large in my entire experience on the city council. And I'm going to try and remember what Manager Neal said, that usually we have either a regulatory role or a substantive role, and in this case, we're doing both. And so just as a mental puzzle, it's been a real learning experience, and it's been a challenging but really rewarding experience. So I'm pleased with where we are. I'm just going to say that up front before I say my other comments. I'm very pleased with where we are. But, 3.3 acres of land in the center of Edina, in the heart of Edina, has endless possibilities. And it truly has seemed endless. We've had 10 plans over 12 years, 3 community advisory teams, as well as other types of public engagement, several different types of public engagement, and we've had 4 formal plans that were all rejected. It's a long time, 12 years. That's an entire trip through our public school system. And really, it started in 2007, the discussion, so you could go even further. So one of the things is that there's a paradox embedded in our guidelines on this, on the guiding principles. And one of the phrases that I found going back through these is that we're going to incorporate natural spaces into high quality and sustainable development. So basically, we're looking at a civic landmark competing with the desire to control costs, including the cost of parking. Sustainability means something that can be held up over time, whether environmental sustainability or financial sustainability. And so with all of these proposals that came before, it was like one of those straw finger puzzles where you stick your fingers in, right? And this one's, we want something that's a landmark, really bold and exciting. And this is, we want to be financially responsible. And as you tried to pull it together, or to do it, you couldn't pull your fingers out because the straw had trapped your fingers. And so as we were going through this, 2 ideas developed, was just in the time that I've been on the council. And one was, well, maybe we have private partners in this and push in to achieve public purpose. And then also we could do this on a neighborhood scale rather than on a huge landmark scale. And when we did that, the puzzle fell away and the solution became clear. And the first time that we looked at this in terms of the park at the top of the hill, activation in the center, and then the housing at the bottom, it was like the lights all turned on. And I was so excited the day we saw that. It was like suddenly, hey, we might be able to do this. And we went out and tried to find partners, and we came up with, we already had the United Properties, and we found Gesture Concepts, and they've been just great partners to work with. It is at a neighborhood scale. And some people have criticized this, saying the design is not bold, creative, and transformational. And one of the things, going back to the founding documents, bold and transformational are not elements of the guiding principles for this. And when I think of something that's bold and transformational, I think of something like the Midtown Global Market, where it was a big change to the neighborhood to save that Sears building. And there were a group of neighbors and citizens that got together, they formed an organization, they had a goal in mind, and they worked towards a specific goal and wouldn't say no. There was a tremendous amount of government money that went into restoring that building, and there's been government money over time sustaining that to keep it a going concern. That's not what we wanted to do here. We looked at a project that had a $70 million, I think it was $70 million, huge price tag to build, and then it would have ongoing operational costs. And so we really wanted to be financially sustainable in doing this. And so when we looked at this as a neighborhood project with private partners, it became really exciting and just wonderful. But it's not bold and transformational like Midtown Global Market. And I just want to make it clear that this can be easily differentiated from something like that. It's also not the glass pyramid in front of the Louvre, right? That was bold and transformational. This is going to be a very vital and important, and it will transform the area, but it's not going to be one of those things where tourists come from all over the world to come see. It's a neighborhood excitement and activation. And that's what makes it possible. So I want to read some of the guiding principles that jumped out when I was reading this. Guidelines is broad direction rather than detailed requirements. Essential commons on the public works site. And related to that, accessible and inviting to pedestrians and cyclists, connections between different parts of the district, and preserve future transit opportunities. This park at the top connects to a pedestrian bridge. And if a pedestrian bridge were to run alongside a tall building or something, it would just be an alleyway. It would be a transportation, but feeding into an open park like this is going to be really welcoming and inviting and bring people in and say, we want you to cross the tracks. We want you to come across and connect this district. A feasibility study that examines the costs and resources available to bear those costs. Human scale and neighborhood character. Mix of office, retail, residential, and public uses. Range of possible housing choices, community building, public green programming, turn perceived barriers into opportunity. And that's one of the things, the elevation, it is a barrier. We've got a hole in the ground like this, and we've got to fill it up, and we've got a train track. And that train track suddenly is now an asset because we've got the pedestrian bridge coming over to draw this part of town with the parking garage and with the Walgreens and with the Jerry's complex, and it really connects it. And with this park and this activation and this community of people living here, it's going to bring all kinds of life and motion to an area that's right now very industrial. And I think that we're going to find being there is a really exciting time and an exciting space to be in. And finally, logical increments of change. So a couple comments from the September hearing. Someone said they'd rather have, or at the September hearing, we heard from Confluence a concept I'd never heard of before, and that was the design, how the street and the park mix have an impact on safety. And talking about Bryant Park, changing the elevation. And that was really eye-opening to me, because a couple of people wrote in to us saying, well, why don't we just plant some trees and leave this as a wilderness space and make it kind of an open park? But with that dip into the ground, that would be a very unsafe space. And especially if you added trees and you're just kind of I think it would not be a good thing. So taking that elevation, making it at street level, makes it more open, more accessible, and safer. And that was really interesting. One of the other things that came up both at the Planning Commission and in the comments was concerned about affordable housing. And I am super excited that we've got some new housing options here, including affordable ownership opportunities. And that's kind of the holy grail that we look for in housing. So I'm really excited to have a very different type of housing option here, and to have those income restricted apartments as part of this is really innovative and cool. Other public goals: walkability, sustainability, neighborhood character, and quality. I love the fact that the space is integrated horizontally. We've got the terracing in the housing, we've got the open yard in the restaurant, and the activation outside, and then the terraced garden. And I love the fact that that theme is incorporated across horizontally the entire lot. And I think that really makes it a sense of community. So while there are three different functions, they really will function as one thing and feel as a cohesive whole. And that was another thing from the public hearing that came forward that was really just icing on the cake to a really good deal. So I want to shout out a very big thank you to our partners, to Alex Hall from United Properties, to Brent Frederick from Jester Concepts, to Terry Menarek from Confluence Design, and from David Anderson, who's been helping us with this. This team, there are lots of teams in the world, and this has been a really complicated process, and all of you have been patient, and you've been enthusiastic, and you've been extremely knowledgeable, and I am very thankful for that, because this has been a difficult process. I'm super excited to approve this plan. I think it's going to make the Grandview area a really exciting place to visit. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for those thoughtful comments. Member Anderson?
Thank you. Well, I would concur with virtually everything that Member Jackson's mentioned. I think that to me, the key is that this is the culmination of many, many years by a lot of people of taking a look at this site and saying, how do we create a public benefit here? What ultimately is going to happen? And as mentioned, there have been a lot of different thoughts on it. And there's still a lot of thoughts about, well, gee whiz, you could have or should have done something else. And some of those comments are accurate in the fact that yes, something else could have happened. However, this was the absolute best. I won't call it a compromise. It was the best decision to come to based on the economics of it, because it provides a restricted age ownership option, which the senior cooperative concept works incredibly well. You create a neighborhood. And I think that the people who live there and the neighbors around them will find that that neighborhood is extremely positive, and it's also a high demand item. The gathering place, it's a restaurant, but it's a gathering place. And the gathering place was, I think, fundamental in trying to determine what can or should be happening here. And we've achieved that. We have a minor challenge in making certain that people have access to it. And we're going to have to work on that in terms of the bridge and using Jerry's parking as one of the major parking or customer accesses to your facility. But I think we're up for that. And I think that we just have to find ways to encourage and educate people in order to make sure that that facility is used and that bridge is utilized. And the public grounds, which further, I think, adds to the gathering place concept that we're trying to achieve there in terms of the public park, which the facility, the Jester facility, really becomes an extension of that. And I'm very excited to see how that's activated and how that's ultimately used. It was interesting earlier tonight to hear from boards and commissions in their work plans to hear how many of these various entities were very excited about participation in that park and this utilization, how that can work. So the one thing that we can anticipate as we get there is that people will be jumping in and people will be trying to make that thing work as well as it can be, or as well as it can, excuse me. So I'm pretty excited about bringing this thing forward, and I thank you.
Thank you, Member Anderson. There was intentionality on my part in waiting to hear from Member Staunton, because his was one of the first voices to be heard when we started this process, and now he's one of the last voices to be heard, I think. And his voice has been important all the way through this whole process of trying to figure out what are those combinations of public and private uses that might work here. And he's had some great ideas along the way. And I thank both of you for your comments, and I'm looking forward to yours.
Thank you, Mayor. When we started this back in 2010, one of the things that was apparent pretty quickly was that Grandview, the general district, is kind of a convenience retail district along Vernon Avenue. It's a place where a lot of people go to drop in and then get what they need and then leave. And what we decided we wanted to do was create a destination companion to that convenience retail. And it could be on the other side of the tracks, so to speak. And this was before the Hilltop, actually. It was still back when it was Eden Avenue Grill, and it wasn't a gathering place at the end, let me tell you. But but they did a terrific
you were over
job
80, it was.
yeah, right. But they did a terrific job of recreating themselves, and now it has become a gathering place. And so I think, the success here still is yet to be realized because, we're going to have to see what people do with it. But it's time to take a stab at it, and I think this will be a terrific place. As Member Jackson said in one of our meetings, this will be great because we can create a gathering place where people can get together and have fun and enjoy each other, and we don't have to spend $40 million to do it. And I think that's right. So I'll be an enthusiastic yes on this. I was really delighted to hear our commissioners tonight in our work session talking so enthusiastically about the opportunity to program that. And I know Mr. Frederick has talked about that. And I think this is going to be it's a great park with a hospitality amenity is the way I see it. And it will be what we make of it now, and I'll be glad to be done. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I was sitting here thinking, too, that it was interesting that we had Member Jackson lead off, and as one of our newest members, she did a great job of providing the history of from whence we came. And I think, along with Member Anderson, we've both really loved the senior cooperative notion on that property. We've seen over the years, I think every time I've gone to 7500 York, which is the first senior co-op, not only in Edina, but I think in the country, every time I go over there, they hand me a packet. You better sign up, Mayor, because it's going to take you 10 years to get in here. So I throw the packet in the back seat, and it disappears, and then the next time I go over, the same thing happens. And so we needed that kind of housing. I mean, we talk about trying to provide a variety of housing in our community, and we were short of senior cooperative that you could get into in a timely manner, and it's going to be at a price point that is reflective of people being able to bank up some of the equity in their homes. And so I like that part of it. I think Member Staunton was, when we started talking about senior co-op, he said, well, let's not forget about making sure that place stays active. Let's make sure that we activate it and do what he just described. Make it a place that you come and stay, not just that you come to and go from. And so with the addition of the of Jester concept and their vision, they're being part of our community, having that level of enthusiasm for being part of this project, I'm really grateful for that as well. And then to have this park that I think Confluence has really ignited a lot of our thoughts around what it could be, even though it occupies probably not a third of the space, but something less than that. But the notion that it could be something akin to Bryant Park caused me to think, when I saw the comments, I think coming out of the Park Commission, that this is meant for passive uses. I thought, I'm not so sure I agree with that. I think it could be that and more, along with a great spot for public art in appropriate places. Think of the sculpture pieces we could have over there. So I think you can almost feel the synergy and the energy of that whole 3.3 acres working together. And it's the first time that I've felt that in all the years we've looked at all these projects that Member Jackson alluded to. So I'm very supportive of it as well. So I'll ask now if one of my colleagues would move the adoption of Resolution 2022-77, which would approve the preliminary development plan and preliminary rezoning from PID Planned Industrial District to PUD 24, Planned Unit Development 24, and subdivision replat at 5146 Eden Avenue, and grant first reading of ordinance 2022-11.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. A motion by Member Staunton, second by Member Jackson to adopt a motion as stated. Any further discussion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I
Yes,
forgot
go
to
ahead.
thank you and that's to Member Staunton, who has been the shepherd of this project from the beginning. And every time we got blocked, he came up with an idea to keep us moving. And I cannot say highly enough how much I respect and admire your help and your guidance of this, and your work in general, of course. But I warned you I'd embarrass you, but I have to say thank you.
Thank you, Member Jackson. All right. Any other comments generally that members want to make? All right, we've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? I think we're finished with that. All those in favor of adoption of the motion as stated, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. Good work, everybody. Great work. And then we've got one more matter of substance on this portion of the agenda this evening, and that's the potential adoption of Resolution 2022-81, which deals with the properties down at 7200 and 7250 France Avenue South. And Director Teague, our Community Development Director, has this matter as well. Director Teague?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, members of the council. While we haven't looked at this site quite as long as the Grandview site, it's pretty close to it. This is another long time coming with the demolition of the parking ramp taking place right now. So as mentioned, you had held the public hearing. At your last meeting, we haven't received any additional comments since the meeting. The ask this evening is a rezoning and ordinance amendment to amend the PUD 16 that was previously approved for a project that was never built. This is a two-phase project. The first phase would be a 5-story, 124,000 square foot office with a 2,200 square foot coffee shop with underground parking. The second phase, which would be required to come back through the Planning Commission and City Council process, would be a similar size building, be 150 units of housing with the availability for retail up to 10,000 square feet. The Planning Commission reviewed the project and is recommending approval on a 6-0 vote. They had that one condition where the north-south sidewalk and bike path be separated from the roadway, and the applicant has already provided those plans. They provided those at the last meeting. So with that, staff is recommending approval that you adopt the resolution before you and the ordinance on first reading. And the applicants are here to answer any questions as well.
Good. Thank you. Questions from council members for Mr. Teague? Anybody? Member Jackson?
I've already asked him offline, so I have the answers.
All right. Okay. Member Anderson?
Thank you. I do have a couple of questions for the applicant. This is a phased project, and so I'm wondering, do you have anticipated start and completion dates on the various phases?
Yes, good evening. Ted Carlson with Orion Investments. We've begun demolition on the 7250 site, the south site, and we expect to have shovels in the ground April of 2023 to construct this project if it's so approved tonight. As far as 7200 site goes, we expect to begin marketing that in earnest this spring, probably this fall, maybe this spring, sometime after we secure our debt and equity for the south piece to figure out how we can bring the north piece to life, the 7200 site.
Okay. In your initial presentation, you mentioned that housing wasn't going to be an option in this, and I thought that you were referring to market conditions, but I'm not certain of that, so I don't want to. But so what changed your mind about adding housing to the mix?
I think it's a combination of timing. I think it could possibly be housing. I think as we've talked with staff that housing could also possibly include hospitality is regulated very similarly. So I think that our expectation amongst our team is that it could be a possibility of housing, hospitality, and or retail.
Okay, that's helpful. And then last is, do you anticipate requesting public support in the form of tax increment financing? And if so, to what extent?
I think that's quite likely. We're still evaluating our costs right now, and I don't have any further details that I can provide right now.
Would you be requesting it on phase one?
Yes.
And that would be, there's public, we've got a stormwater issue there that is being offset in this, and that was actually part of the formerly approved project there as well, and I would see that. Anything else that we should know about as we consider this going forward?
Know about as far as?
The level of tip that you might request.
I think it's tied to the very clear public benefits if and when that happens.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Member Sutton, anything? All right.
Actually, Mr. Mayor, I do have a question
Member Jackson, go ahead.
for the applicant. Thank you. So I talked to some of the neighbors. There was a neighborhood party, and one of the things they mentioned in the previous project that we saw was that the lighting at the corner of 72nd and France, it's a very dark corner, and that the curb cutouts are very dangerous. You have to go out into France to actually cross the street if you're in a stroller, or it's on the diagonal, or in a wheelchair. So I guess my question for you at this point is now the time to raise that, or when you're doing the 7,200, to the north, the 7,200 proposal?
Thank you for the question, Member Jackson. As part of this first phase of approvals, is we will provide all of what I would call the site infrastructure, to include the north-south connector, the sidewalks, the stormwater management, and really so that the 7,200 site is pad ready. So if we have our plans available, I think we could show our sidewalk design that Confluence prepared, so that if you are on France and 72nd, you're pulled away from the curb, and I believe you have 2 paths to move along France, in addition to many different paths throughout the site.
Yeah, I was looking at it as I was preparing my notes, and it was small enough where it wasn't clear that would make that. So I guess as you're refining that, to keep that in mind, that when they said we try to walk our kids in a stroller and we have to go out into France at the current curb cut. So it looked like it might accommodate it, but it was a little orange triangle.
Will do, and duly noted.
Okay, thank you. And then on the question of lighting, do you think that corner, when you put a building up or something, could be lit up in some way?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that we would like to have, we have typically have very good lighting plans in our project, so yes.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions.
That prompt anything from any other council members? All right. Well, we had that photo up of the demolition in process here. It's good to see.
Yeah.
That's what it looked like at about noon today. So if you want to see it,
it's a prime location in our community on a active commercial corridor. So many people love the notion of being on France Avenue, and I'm glad you undertook this project. So there's someone on the council that would move the approval of Resolution 2022-81, approving a rezoning ordinance amendment and revised overall development plan and site plan review for 7250 and 7200 France Avenue, coupled with granting first reading of zoning ordinance number 2022-13.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I have actually a question still, or comment before we vote, but I will wait for the second.
Second? I'll second. All right. Discussion. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Some things that I want to bring forward, and I would hope, frankly, that as they're addressed, that we can get responses that I can live with here in terms of going forward. I would far prefer actually just to be looking at the initial phase of the proposal tonight as opposed to 2 phases. And this is why. Because across the street, it went through so many iterations, and what was ultimately approved was not what was approved is not ultimately what we saw. And that's why I'm asking questions about when and how can we do that. The biggest issue for me is height, because it's 84 feet on the west side. And even though technically that's at the limit of the design guidelines, what it does is it tends to further encapsulate the Cornelia residential neighborhood that's immediately west of it. I recall former council member Fisher making a strong case and working to get to a 67-foot height on the site for that very reason. And so that's a design concept. I'm not trying to address your business model, but it is a design concept which could be modified. The Gallagher Drive setback is, to me, inadequate, and asking for a setback variance there, especially on a building of this size, I think should be based on demonstrated hardship. I have questions about the parking capacity and the plan and how that's going to all fold, as does the city's consultant, Mick Johnson. The temporary creation of surface parking on the future apartment site, which serves the office and medical building, is questionable to me, because it's unclear how, when the apartment building is being built, that parking is going to be accommodated into the office and medical building, and I still think that parking is going to be very, very difficult there based on what we're seeing. Last, and this is really just a process issue, there's an existing TIF district in place on the site, which you couldn't take advantage of because it's a PUD 16 zoning. So that has to be decertified, but that's a process that could be in the future. And so I like so much about what you're proposing there, even though the part of it is uncertain. I'm not very concerned about design because I've seen what you've done in places. And so the design piece of it, I know you can handle, even though that's indistinct in this proposal. But for me to support it, I would want to know that this can be addressed and some of these things can be handled and brought to a satisfactory level. Thank you.
Other comments? Member Sutton?
Yeah, I would, I've got some concerns as well, and they're design concerns. I would add, I'd echo many of the things that Member Anderson said, but the other concern I have is a lot of what Mick Johnson articulated, particularly the Woonorf and the backside of the project on Phase 1, because we don't know much about Phase 2, but the backside has surface parking and basically a parking ramp entrance, not a Woonorf. And it doesn't invite anything on the other side, and it doesn't create a transition to the neighborhood as the design experience guidelines call for. And so I just think that needs to be reworked completely. In terms of the drainage pond, it to me, we don't know what that'll look like. Will that be just weeds when it's dry, or will there be water? The design experience guidelines talk about having an amenity, making the water an amenity, using that runoff as an amenity. And especially if we're going to participate, I want to make sure that ends up happening. The surface parking, the height, not in and of itself, but without the step down at 60 feet, which is what the design experience guidelines call for. I just think I like the use, and I think the use is fine, and it's just that I just don't think we're at what the design experience guidelines are calling for here, so I can't support it at this point.
Where are we on the clock?
Different clock.
You have until November 1st to make a decision. So you've got a little time. Unless the applicant agrees to extend that time period or waive.
Yeah, or withdraw it for now. Yeah.
We would not be opposed to continuing this to the next council meeting.
Okay. All right.
Would you like me to address any of the concerns presented tonight, or should we wait until next time?
I think that'd be helpful to get it.
Okay. I think to address Councilmember Anderson and Councilmember Stoughton's concerns, thank you. I think what we talked about with Planning Commission is oftentimes what you see is what we consider to be our absolute best effort in our finished product. And the design team and our team has gone through iteration after iteration of how do we bring bicycles through the site, pedestrians through the site, cars through the site in a meaningful manner that subscribes to the design experience guidelines. And I believe that our team has very good experience with those guidelines in the Southdale District. The site has significant topography challenges and significant challenges that create ADA accessibility challenges. So we're worked to address those, and I think we've worked with Director Milner and his staff quite a bit. So I would ask if what we've proposed and what we've engaged with is maybe adequate in staff's, I think more than adequate in staff's response as to how we move people through the site. With regards to accessing parking, 94% of our parking is underground on this proposed site. 94%. That's incredible and significant. And I just simply don't know, and we've worked with our design team to figure out how else do we move cars in and out of the site. And Woonhorf is designed to be dual traffic. And so we're utilizing the topography to our advantage to create 2 levels of underground parking. So I respectfully, strongly disagree with Mick Johnson's opinions. Thirdly, weeds versus water. We've got watershed district approval, correct? On our proposed plan? Dr. Milner?
I don't know.
Okay. My team has told me that the watershed is agreeable with our stormwater management practice. And what's happened is that what we used to call a holding pond is now meant to be a, thank you, infiltration basin, where it's not designed to hold water regularly. And I don't think that we want to hold water regularly, and frankly, I don't think we would get approved by the watershed district to hold water regularly. So in the full package that was submitted, you'll see that Confluence has put a lot of time and effort into what is planted and how we maintain the trees on the west side of the property to provide a buffer with the neighborhood. And lastly, I think, as one of the Planning Commission members pointed out, the fact that we have an empty room tonight, although it's not a public hearing, and we had very limited comments on this project, I think is a testament to how our team is really engaged in the neighborhood. And the previous projects have had a significant amount of pushback, uproar, and we've, I think, done a really good job of addressing those concerns. And frankly, I think that this project is a great fit within the corridor. And lastly, one of our real issues with Mick is that, the design experience guidelines are very clear to me that mixed use is what we want. And our original proposal was grocer with office, and that was not received favorably. And now we're talking about, well, we've got someone who wants to be a lead tenant on the office today, and we can get it, approximately $75 to $80 million project built today, and take what's there now and scrape it, which we're already doing. And so we think as our resources are not unlimited, to bring that benefit to the city today is a really great thing. And to think about what we do on the north site, the 7200 site in the future, which I explained is a mixture of housing and or hospitality and or retail, is a great thing and completely aligned with the district and the guidelines. So the benefit for the city and the community today is that the sidewalks are in, the connecting street is in, the buildings are gone, the stormwater management is handled, and what we are left with on phase 2, 7200, is a pad-ready site. And if and when we needed parking to support 7250, our use on 7200 would need to be compatible. And that to me is very clear in the ordinance and resolution that staff has laid out. So I think that we've done a really good job of addressing many of the concerns that we've heard tonight. So with all due respect, we're asking for your support on this project. And I hope that if we can't get it tonight, that over the next 12 days or whenever the next meeting is, that we can further address some of your questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Carlson. Any questions? Follow on for Mr. Carlson? I'm thinking the maker of the motion be willing to withdraw her motion. I'll withdraw the second, and we can go to a continuance.
Yes.
All right.
I withdraw my motion.
Is there a motion to continue this matter for discussion at the October 18, 2022 meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and second. Motion by Member Staunton, second by Member Jackson to continue this matter for further discussion and action at the October 18, 2022 meeting of the Edina City Council. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of the motion as stated say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we are now through that portion of the agenda. And we are on to commission correspondence. We've had that in our packet, and we're now on to manager comments. Manager Neal.
No comments from me tonight.
All right, let's go to Member Staunton.
Nothing from me, thanks.
All right, Member Anderson.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to, I had a chance to go through the OLG building, their new construction, a couple days ago, and it was very impressive. And it's just right across the street. They've done a good job, it's very exciting environment over there right now. The kids who were there are very, very proud of that new building, and so it's kind of fun to see that happen and to see that excitement about it. And then I'm going to mention, I talked about this with Director Teague a couple of days ago, and for instance, in this case tonight, the project itself changed so much from its original application, the original presentation. And we have a sketch plan process in place, and I think that's good because it should facilitate feedback to the developer. It should allow a chance to really let it soak in and to talk through that. And when it changes so much, and then we're in a process of a presentation, and then we're voting on it. And I feel as if a second sketch plan here would have been really useful, a sketch plan review. That if they, as a project changes that much, then I think the feedback loop is important for the developer, and I think it's important for the council. I know, at least it is for me. So I just want to throw that out because I felt tonight as if we were throwing, at least I was, throwing stuff at the applicant that they were a little surprised at, that might have gotten to it earlier. And so I just want to mention that in all fairness to everyone, when something changes like that, it'd be a good idea to have another go at it and really view it as a brand new project, because in many ways this was one. That's all I have. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Member Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I've participated in a couple of different events. On the 22nd of September, we had the One Town, One Family with the school district, and it was a very interesting event where we looked at sort of the issues identified in the last meeting and started talking about, well, what does that mean and how do we start defining things. And the next meeting that we're going to have in November, I believe it's November 19th, is going to be looking at actual solutions. So the really interesting thing was that of the people who were there, probably 50% of them were first-time attendees. And so the room was full, and the concern is like, well, it's the same people over and over again, but there were a bunch of new people, and it was great. Had a lot of students there to talk with, and it was a very positive evening, and I encourage people to continue to participate in that. It's a great discussion. On Sunday, we had the Stop the Hate event. And we had a nice crowd of about 40 people or so, I think, and it was a beautiful day. I wish there'd been more people. We need the rain. We could have had it then, but that's available on the YouTube channel, and it was a very positive event. One thing that happened when I talked with the South Cornelia neighborhood, they walked me over to the sewer lift station, and as the sewer lift station, they're on, what's the street?
72nd?
Right south of the,
yeah,
south of the school?
Yeah, on 72nd Street. And I called Manager Neal afterwards, it's getting old. And as it gets old, its ability to keep that smell under control is kind of deteriorating. And I know it's on the schedule to be replaced, but the neighbors really said they've lived there a long time and the smell has been getting worse over time. And I think that that's part of the fact because it's getting old. But to the extent that there's something, I know that there's a rather expensive fix to that, and if it's only going to be for a year, that's not necessarily a wise use of our money. But to the extent that there are any other kinds of ways we can mitigate that smell until the new station is up and running, it was a very chilly evening, and it was pretty strong smelling. I can't imagine on those 90-degree days what they're doing. So if there's any sort of short-term fix to that, I think the neighbors would truly appreciate it, and I'd like that to happen. So,
Yeah, I can speak to that quickly, Mayor, if that's all right. They're intending to start construction this month, so you'll start seeing work there. We're struggling with the same challenges for materials and shortages all over, so this project, I think, is going to last a little longer than necessary, but we'll talk to the contractor to see if there's some temporary measures we can do, since it is going to be a little extended because of those shortages of various materials.
Okay, well, thank you, and I know the neighbors will truly appreciate anything you can do. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Member Jackson. This morning I had breakfast with Ann Swenson, our former colleague. Wanted to talk about some housing-related issues because of her work on the Housing Foundation. And then when I got done, I drove south on Arcadia, and this is a shout-out for Director Milner. I just wanted to drive around and around and around on that roundabout, like a half a dozen times, just to really savor the thing being done. I wished it wasn't all concrete. I wish there was something green in the middle, but nonetheless, just kind of driving around it was kind of liberating. And all right. So thanks for your tenacity on getting that done. And then we've got, both Member Staunton and Dave Kendall will know about this case. I got a call from James Whisker over at the Watershed District, and Dick Miller from our community represents us on the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District. And there was a case that was in front of the Supreme Court, I think came up from up in Anoka County, where you now have to give deference to cities. And if there's at least, there can be up to, I think, I'm paraphrasing this, but there should be up to 3 names submitted to the county board for appointment to the watershed district. So they just can't make a unilateral decision anymore. Well, there's been a couple names submitted, and Dick's up for reappointment, and they're going to put together a proposed resolution for us to look at supporting his reappointment. They need that to get to that number, that magic number, where they can then make a decision without running what they think is running afoul of the Supreme Court case that gave deference to cities and the desire of cities to see certain appointees on county-appointed boards and commissions. So that's one thing that we'll be seeing coming our way. And then the Stop the Hate event, I thought our chief and I were on a panel. I thought the chief did a great job on the panel, and people were quite appreciative of him, and he does a wonderful job on I'll call it external communications with the public, and that's really good. And then we continue to work on some of these public safety issues. Manager Neal and the chief and I are going to try to set up a meeting with Mark Osler, who's running that subcommittee I'm on violent crime, and we'll get an update there. The feds and the city of Minneapolis, along with that Operation Endeavor that they have going, they're starting to pick up more and more people that are causing a lot of trouble. And of course, now we've had this little spate of activity with some people from another state committing some crimes in our town, and I think we were quick to act there too, and apprehend at least 2 out of 3 of them. So that's a good thing. I don't know if you want to report out anything further on that at this point in time.
Under investigation.
Under investigation. Okay, good. And that's it for me. Just thinking tonight about Ashwin and all these young people that are serving on boards and commissions. We're really blessed to have all these sharp young people in our town that want to serve their town. So, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Member Jackson, second by Member Anderson to adjourn the meeting of the Edina City Council on this October 6th, 2022. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of the motion as stated, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. We stand adjourned. Thanks, everyone.